Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast, a podcast you come to when you're finally ready to take fantasy hockey seriously. My name is Nate Groot-Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of the Zero-G Draft Strategy, and in this episode, Blake and I are beginning our annual projection series in which we review our projections for every fantasy-relevant player on all 32 NHL teams. Let's get it. Of course, I have your best friend and my best friend, everybody's best friend, Blake Creamer here tonight. Blake, how are we feeling?
Well, I was feeling good until you had an upward inflection at the end of that. That made it sound like a question, Nate, but that's fine. I'm going to take that. I'm very lonely, but buddy, I'm so stoked. It's time. It's time to talk about our projections. It's so fun, and you know what happens when we talk about projections? We got to get the deep V's going. We got to go way deep. All right, deeper than the lipid pools that Nate Niblin calls eyeballs. All right, or pupils. I don't know. You get the gist. But buddy, I'm excited to chop it up with you. These are always my favorite episodes of the season.
Yeah, man, every single year we do this, and every single year I feel like I say the same thing, but it really is kind of the apogee of our off season. It's the spot where we bring together everything that we do here at Apples and Ginos, and we set the baseline for everything else that will come into the season. When we talk about it, when we get into the first few weeks of the season, we talk about versus our expectation. Like, these are the expectations that we're going to be evaluating players versus. And yeah, for that reason, I think this is some of the best work we do and some of the most crucial work that we do all year long to get people prepared for their fantasy hockey drafts. What do you think, Blake? Are you ready to dig in?
Oh, yeah. You know I'm ready, buddy. Apogee. Just for the folks out there, the highest point, climax, or culmination of something. So, you know, we're learning more than one thing here today, and we appreciate you, NGN.
All right, let's dig into it with Anaheim here off the rip. Talking about some key departures, they had a few. Mason McTavish is gone. Jacob Trube is gone. John Carlson was only there for a bit, but he's gone as well. Radko Gudas, their captain, is gone, and Olin Zellweger is gone. And if that sounds like a lot of defensemen leaving the Anaheim Ducks to you, that's because it is. And to replace all of those leaving defensemen, they have acquired Nick Jensen. End of sentence. AJ Greer, Laurent Brossoit also have been acquired this offseason, but obviously there's been a few more things afoot in Anaheim with the Leo Carlsson offer sheet and all those shenanigans. Let's get some thoughts there, Blake. What do you think? Because we're doing this projection series, but it feels like there's more to come with this team.
Yeah, I can't imagine that they're finished. Like, when you look at their top six defensemen, it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't really compute. It reminds me of San Jose a few years back, but at least the Ducks have Jackson Lacombe, right? You got a stud out there who I'm excited to talk about. But other than that, yeah, it's basically spare parts and hopes and dreams, right? So I feel like more's coming. Obviously, they're going to have to clear up some cap space as well. We got the Cutter Gauthier signing that has to happen, and obviously Leo Carlsson, you know, securing the bag is gonna throw a wrench into all this stuff. I feel like this offseason here with the Ducks, like, it really changed the trajectory of the team, didn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think they were really thinking they were going to get Carlson in for, I don't know, maybe 13 at the tops.
I heard
And
10-5 that they offered at the beginning of the season. Like, wow. Okay.
yeah, that if that was really what they thought they were going to be able to do, then I have lost even more respect for Pat Verbeek than I previously had, which probably wasn't a lot to begin with. But either way, like, I kind of like it when the old heads in the NHL kind of get it shoved back in their face a little bit and they have to scramble. I don't mind it at all. But as far as the Ducks go and what it means for fantasy, like, it is a little concerning now. Like, what are they going to do? Because yeah, they do have big holes on defense as the roster currently sits right now. the guys that they can potentially move are mostly like Chris Kreider, Alex Killorn, Frank Vatrano. I don't think that any teams are just lining up to take these guys. Maybe Chris Kreider, but Kreider was such a good fit on that top line with Carlsson and Terry last year that I don't think that's kind of the last of that three that they would want to move off of. But I think for the other two, Killorn and Vatrano, probably other teams are saying, why am I helping you out of this spot? Throw in something, make it sweeter for me rather than the other way around. And that's probably where they're stuck at right now. I think one way or another it's got to happen, and so that they can assemble an NHL caliber defensive core, or at least try to. But either way, there is a lot still in flux there in Anaheim. I do think we get Cutter Gauthier done in the relatively near future. That has to be the next order of business for them there. Whatever that number is, that kind of sets them up for what they're going to do with the rest of the roster, I think. And we just saw Connor Bedard sign 5 years, $15 million. I think that probably puts a ceiling on what Cutter Gauthier can get, and I think they'll probably get him in somewhere between 13 and 15, but we'll see where that one goes. Let's talk about coaching here. Obviously, Joel Quenneville returning for his second season. The first season was a roaring success, just turned the horses loose, got huge years out of a lot of his players. But now we're asking, what can he do for an encore? Is he going to try to pull back on the offense a little bit and try to save this defense that looks well, we're maligning it right now. Who knows what it looks like by the beginning of the season? But I think that you have to at least ask yourself, is what we saw last year from Joel Quenneville what the Ducks are going to play this upcoming season?
I don't know how they can do that. Honestly, I don't see how you can just roll it back. Like last season was such a success, at least offensively, because they were sort of living by the rush and dying by the rush, right? This team was third best in expected goals for per 60 at 5-on-5, really nice. 11th best in actual goals for per 60. So offense was great. Expected goals against was 30th in the league, and they were 29th in actual goals against per 60 at 5-on-5. So just hemorrhaging chances and shots. And that was with Jacob Trouba and Ginos and Zellweger, right? Who are, let's just call them NHL defensemen, right? So now without them, yeah, I feel like we're going to have to temper expectations with Anaheim here. Anaheim was amazing at their rush offense last year, one of the league's top teams, but they were also one of the league's worst teams in suppressing rush offense. So something's got to give is what I'm trying to say here. I think, we talked about them having just literally one legit NHL defenseman in Jackson Lacombe. What's going to happen? I feel like, they're going to have to sort of dumb things down a little bit for some of these young players. Maybe you'll see a little bit more like, these young D in the defensive zone flipping pucks out instead of making plays to get it out, right? Maybe Leo Carlsson doesn't get as many good passes to his stick where he can, connect that rush and do what he does. I feel like I feel like we have to temper expectations. I don't think they're going to be the same kind of offensive dynamo that they were. And that sort of is reflected in my projections anyway.
Yep. Yeah, I think you've got to at least think that some things are going to have to change this year. And I think Quenneville's smart enough to know that at a basic level, he's got to figure that out and figure out what the best version of this team is. Because it's one thing to allow a bunch of chances and to let the horses loose. It's another thing to figure out what puts you back in the playoffs where you were a season ago. So let's talk about the power play here. I think Carlsson, Terry, Kreider, Lacombe, they're all locks when healthy. Obviously, we know Troy Terry is not going to be healthy to start the season after undergoing surgery for a hip issue and labral tear. But when healthy, I think those four guys are all pretty locked in. Cutter Gauthier should be, by all rights, based on his production. But Quenneville did keep pushing him back to power play 2, and Mikael Granlund got a lot of run there on the top power play unit. I think that it's possible that part of that was due to Cutter Gauthier getting that. I think it was a broken rib, was confirmed at the end, got a cross check and didn't play as much, even 5-on-5 down the stretch and into the playoffs. His minutes were a little bit less than you might have expected. So I do think that that's probably part of it. And if you pay him, like we were talking about, 13 to 15 million, how can you possibly put that guy on power play 2 and sell that? I don't know, but that's at least a conversation. Where do you land on that? Do you think there's maybe a split there when everybody's healthy? Do you think Gauthier's got it in the bag this year?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, with Terry out, we're getting kind of a mixed bag. And I think that, to start, Gauthier and Granny are both going to get a shot at that top power play, right? Which makes sense. That's how it should be. And I believe it should be a true 1A unit here. Quenneville did some funny things there. Even when Gauthier was healthy, he was on power play 2 at times, which didn't make a lot of sense, right? So we'll have to wait and see. But if common sense prevails, I think both those players are getting power play 1. I think when Terry does get back, it's going to be interesting because I think you want Granlund out there because of the faceoffs, right? Leo Carlsson is not good at taking faceoffs. That's, he's a young player. He's still learning, whereas Granlund is a little bit better, right? And not to mention, Granlund is amazing with high danger passes. That's something that really stands out for him, when you dig in on the microstats and things like that. He's kind of made for power play performance, right? I think he's a really good power play player when he gets that role. So I don't know. I think, again, like if Cutter gets in around the $13 million mark, how do you put him on power play 2? I'm wondering, I'm even just thinking about this for the first time, but do you think they would maybe take Kreider off there? Like, I know he's still, even at his age, he's still one of the best net front players in the league, but he's also a roadblock to some good young offensive players. Like, are you really keeping Gauthier off, who I think would probably be the guy that is on the outs, based on what we've seen so far, just to put Kreider out there for one more year? I'm not sure about that, right? But maybe the coaches need to look at kind of changing the way that power play looks, right? As opposed to, like Kreider's role of just kind of barreling in there in the front and jamming home rebounds and things like that. Tipping, maybe it's more kind of like the Florida model, where they're kind of hitting the triangle on one of the lower sides and setting up players cross ice for plays, like Gauthier and who's the other guy on the flank there? Like, I think Granlund plays on that flank, but he's a left winger, so yeah, he's kind of facilitating things. Anyways, I think Gauthier should be the main guy with Carlsson on that power play. So we'll see. What do you think about Kreider off power play 1?
Yeah, I think everything should be on the table for them because it's not like their power play tore things up last year.
Yeah.
They tried some different things. They tried John Carlson on the top power play when they had him. It's not like they were one of the most efficient power plays out there. For what it's worth, Kreider was pretty efficient, and I do think that he isn't necessarily the problem. He is, a limited scope player in that he's not really a guy who's going to move around and create a lot of different problems for defense to figure out, but he is going to specifically bother the goaltender, which is a good thing in and of itself. So I think there's probably a scenario in which he does. I doubt that's the way things open up, and it would probably take another season of ineffectiveness for them to go that route and to get that drastic with it. But I think it's definitely within the range of outcomes. I think we've talked about Granlund, but we should mention at least Beckett Seneca after the season that he had and the possibility that he continues to improve and even pushes himself into the mix for power play time. I don't expect that. I've not projected it that way. I have him projected just over 2 minutes of power play time as kind of the next guy up after Granlund there. But I do think that it's worth mentioning that there is a world in which Seneca has another level up this year and really establishes himself as a guy that you just can't keep off the top power play. And at that point, it probably is Kreider coming off because you just feel you have to have that kind of talent level, and you're looking at yourself as more of the Dallas style power play where everybody's just elite and you're throwing the puck around at will. So one to mention there. And who do you think is the power play 2 quarterback? I don't know that it's going to matter too much for fantasy, but when Terry's back and either Granlund or Gauthier is on the second power play unit, Seneca is on the second power play unit, then somebody back there could run into a few power play points. I have it as Tristan Luneau, mostly because he's been a pretty solid AHL power play quarterback for the last 2 years for the San Diego Gulls there, has had some good offensive seasons. Pavel Mintyukov did not really do much power play stuff at all last year for the Ducks. It was Olin Zellweger running the second power play unit more often than not, and then obviously Carlsson came along and there was even less power play time to spare. But how do you have that shaking out, Blake?
Yeah, I think it's going to be sort of a 50-50. I would project, and I did project that the fresh maker, Pavel Mintyukov, would be the one taking that role to start the season. I like the Tristan Luneau kind of narrative. Yeah, this is a guy that's going to hopefully take a step and be able to jump in here and play some big minutes for this team. But I just have a feeling that he's still going to be playing sheltered third line minutes, maybe being put in offensive situations. But that said, I projected Minty for a minute and a half or just over a minute and a half. And then I think I projected Tristan Luneau for like a minute 20 or something like that. So, and I projected Luneau for more power play points because I just think he's probably a better player there. But I mean, I think Mintyukov, like early in his career, he was sort of heralded as an offensive defenseman. He's excellent in transition. He's a good play driver in his own right. And I mean, his new contract, well, like that is a spicy contract there. I guess every young defenseman these days is getting $7 million. So that's fine. But, I
Except
think
for Zellweger.
right. Yeah. He's taken half that. That's fine. You had me at hello, like just give me the cash. But yeah, I do think that Minty's contract kind of says to me like maybe they'll try him there first and see if it works. And I think he's got that in his bag. That said, too, I think Luneau is sort of a wild card and could maybe hit. Especially if like what if Jackson Lacombe gets injured? Right now, I'm interested in both. Right. Even though that power play in Anaheim wasn't awesome last year, I think it was, what was it? 24th best in goals for per 60. That's not good. Okay. But I think they should be a little bit better than that. And yeah, these guys can run into some points there.
All right, let's dig in on the projections themselves, comparing ourselves here. Starting off the rip with Leo Carlsson. I had him projected for 39 goals, 48 assists, 87 points. You have him for 36 goals, 47 assists, and 83 points. So a little bit of a difference there. This is actually the biggest difference we have, so we're pretty tight across the board on these Anaheim players. I like to see that. For myself, being a little bit higher here, I think a good chunk of it is probably just that I really believe in the player. I believe in the player's continued ascension. I think this is a guy who can score 100 points in this league. And in a perfect scenario where they had all of their pieces coming back and they had actually managed to acquire somebody of note to move the puck on the back end, I think that there was a scenario in which that could have happened this year. Probably not going to happen this year, but I do think that this is a guy who has that kind of potential. And so I really like Carlsson as a guy who still in our APL mocks that we've been doing is going in the 4th round pretty routinely, sometimes slips even to the 5th round. If you're getting that kind of value that late, you should definitely be all over it. Now he's got an $18 million contract. I think really all that does for me is adds variance, because we've seen big contracts weigh down players in the past. We've also seen it be, just a catalyst for even more minutes, even more responsibility, and that can be just a volume driver of a guy who goes to the next level. So I think that both options are on the table for me. I think it just kind of opens the variability on the Leo Carlsson projection for me, but I did end up a little higher. You want to tamp down my enthusiasm there, Blake?
Wow, that was some enthusiasm. Oh my God. It's wild stuff over here. Now I'm right with you with Leo Carlsson. I think that to me, I wanted to project higher, right? Like I still got him for, 83 points. That's an amazing season. That's a big step up from what he was able to do last year. But I don't know. I'm not going to make leaps that aren't there. You know what I mean? Even though he's the highest paid player in the league, right? That's not good process to me to be. I'm not saying you did either. I think we're right kind of where we need to be. And it's a somewhat safe projection on Leo Carlsson. Obviously, I think, I agree with you. There's ceiling there, 100 points. I don't think that happens this year. Like a lot would have to go right. They'd have to have breakouts from a lot of other players on the team as well for Carlsson to do that. But yeah, I think he's an elite play driver and rusher, right? In fact, like I don't even think it's a stretch to say that this guy is one of the top end guys in the league in terms of that, right? In terms of his rush play, his confidence off the rush, like, Mac, Jack Hughes, McDavid, right? I'm putting him in that realm, on the low end, obviously, like he's coming up, but with that particular skill, he's got a very particular set of skills. All right. And that's what it looks like, right? He still has puck management issues, right? Which is obviously a problem for a lot of young players. Coach Q's just going to have to deal with that, right? And then, like we talked about already, the loss of some solid D-men, I think, hurts this team in the end. And I just don't think that they're going to be able to break the puck out as cleanly. And I think that is one of the reasons why I can't really go much higher on Leo Carlsson. But I mean, 80, you have him for 86.6. I got him for 83.4. To get that in the 4th round, I feel like that's really good. I think in really sharp leagues, yeah, you're going to get him in the 4th and 5th round. But I think in casual leagues, you might have to pay up, right? I could see a lot of people drafting him in like the 2nd or 3rd round, because of their expectation based on his salary. And I just don't think this player is there yet.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when we get ADPs from the normie drafts coming through. But
Normies.
yeah, I think one thing I will highlight here, Evan for 26 power play points, if they figure out that power play and they go from 24th to even like, above
Mid. Yeah.
average,
Yeah.
yeah, like in the say 10th to 16th range, does that put Leo Carlsson now in the 30s in power play points? And all of a sudden you're talking about that 90 plus point season. I think that's definitely possible. All right, next up, Chris Kreider, I have for 24 goals, 29 assists, 53 points. You have him for 22 goals, 30 assists, and 52 points with the round down there. So pretty tight on Chris Kreider. I think this one's pretty open and shut, to be quite honest with you, unless, he's just getting older. That's probably the only way I see this really falling off for Chris Kreider. Do you think that, the Troy Terry injury here, we have them both projected? I think I have him for 55 games, you have him for 54, so we're pretty tight on that projection. But do you think that Troy Terry's, being out for the first 30 games of the season, does that slow down Chris Kreider? And is that a potential kind of pitfall if fantasy managers are thinking about drafting him this year?
Um, maybe in some cases, but the Ducks are really lucky. They have people that can step into that role and do a good job. You got Beckett Seneca who could jump up there. You got Cutter Gauthier who could jump up there. So, I mean, obviously they're a little bit of a different look, but I don't know. I feel like Seneca in particular, if he found his way onto line one there, like this guy's an elite rush player as well. I just think it would make Chris Kreider's job very similar to what it is when he's with Troy Terry and Leo Carlsson, because it's basically just get to open space and put the biscuit in the basket, right? And win your board battles, right? And let the other guys kind of get the biz. And I think, Seneca could be kind of a Troy Terry replacement there. I've projected Gauthier as the guy to go up there. Just again, the contract stuff, I feel like, and I just feel like that's a player that needs to be prioritized a little bit more. And I feel like Joel Quenneville will hopefully agree with that. But yeah, I don't think it's going to affect Chris Kreider too much. But like you said, I mean, we know what this player is. I think the only way he doesn't really reach these heights that we've got for him here is if they do move him off the power play for some reason, right? But even though he's an older guy, he can still skate really, really well, which is a big benefit for him. He's usually pretty good as a beefer as well. Only 69 hits last year, buddy. Nice. Okay. But yeah, I think I'm into Chris Kreider. Certainly late. Like this is a guy you can pick up with your last pick if you want. He's out there. And I think that you could do a lot worse than Chris Kreider. I think he is a power play one guy, line one guy with a really capped ceiling.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think we're pretty close on everything related to Chris Kreider here. Be interesting to see what happens there. I could see a world in which he gets kind of demoted to a second line. Gauthier and Seneca go up with Carlson, and that's probably worst case scenario for Kreider. But I don't really think that's the most likely scenario, and I haven't really projected it that way. So that's kind of the only thing that I'd be watching out for when we get some early lines out of camp here.
That just gave me goosebumps. Oh my God. Are they going to do that? Get Chris Kreider the hell out of my sight. No, I love Chicken Necks. He's fine.
All right, Troy Terry. I'm doing this based off the 55 games. As I said, Blake, you had him for 54, so a little bit less there, but I had him for 17 goals in those 55 games. Add 29 assists there for 46 points. You have him for 15 goals, 33 assists, 48 points in those 54 games. That for me works out to my 46 and 55 works out to about 71 points in an 84 game schedule, if you're wondering. So put him in that range. I did kind of have him a little bit down, and you were a little bit higher than me. I am a little bit worried about this injury and coming back from it in season. He would be far from the first player that we've seen come back into the season, especially from, hips are pretty important for a hockey player's mobility.
They don't lie.
Yeah, you need those. At least I'm told. If you play beer league like me, you don't need them nearly as much, but I think at the NHL level, they're probably a little more important. Either way, I think Troy Terry, I'm going to be interested because I do think you're going to see him be completely forgotten about in a lot of drafts. And if you've got a lot of IR spots in your league, he makes a nice late round stash. You throw him on your IR for the first 2-3 months of the season, you forget about it. And if everything goes right, you wake up with a 70-point player on your squad midway through the season. But I think there is a scenario here in which they do have to bring him along slowly, in which maybe even he tries to rush back a little bit too fast, and he is really ineffective at first when he comes back, and it takes him a while to get his feet under him again. So, just some things I'm thinking about with Troy Terry. Obviously, a player that I have loved and caped for many, many times on this podcast.
Yep. Yeah, no, I love Troy Terry as well. It's unfortunate, and I think it's a blanket rule, and it's not 100%, but I don't like drafting injured players, right? It's just there's no reason for it unless you're getting them an extreme value, right? And yeah, like Troy Terry, I've seen him go much higher in drafts than I'm comfortable with. It doesn't even make sense because 70 to 75 is kind of the ceiling, right? Like, I think he has a good floor too, but still coming back off of this surgery, like, for reference, like some other players that have had this surgery, I think, didn't like Tyler Seguin had it, Ryan Kessler back in the day, Nick Backstrom. These are all guys that had that, and to varying success and coming back, right? So I don't know. All that to say, like one thing I did read about Troy Terry's injury is that he was really proactive about it. Like he got it before like the bone was like crunching on each other, right? Where some of these other players did. So this was purely a proactive move for him and should equal, even due to his age, him getting back to like 95 to 100% there. But will it be this season? Right.
Right.
That's what I'm concerned about. So all that to say, like, yeah, he's going to get some good opportunity when he gets back. I think it's a fine stash if you can get it at value. And I watched a bunch of to prepare for these episodes. That's why it takes so long. I'm watching a bunch of exit interviews and like the players talking about what they're going to do next season, what the coaches say. And Troy Terry was really, really critical of himself. Like he wants to be relied upon to score, and he feels like he had a really kind of down season in terms of efficiency. So, all that to say, I think this player is really motivated. I hope he doesn't come back too soon. I think that, yeah, this is a 65 to 70 point player when he does come back. 0 periffs. Okay. For God's sake, Troy, what he's just, yeah, he doesn't care. He's like a matador out there. Like someone goes to hit him, he dodges it. And then if he's going to dodge, he'll just turn around, pat the guy in the head. He doesn't care. But yeah, I think that I'm probably staying away from Troy Terry this year.
All right, next up, Mikael Granlund. I had him for 21 goals, 37 assists, 58 points. You have him for 20 goals, 41 assists, 61 points there. I think that Mikael Granlund makes kind of an intriguing option toward the back end of your draft, especially because it does really look like he'll get power play 1 to start the season at the very least. And yeah, by the time Troy Terry comes back, this is a guy that you're going to be spending a very late draft pick on. Maybe runs hot for the first bit, scores at a 70-point pace for the first 25, 30 games of the season, and then you don't have to feel too bad when Troy Terry takes his spot and you eventually dump him. But I do think that Mikael Granlund is a guy that you should be thinking about once you get towards the back end of your drafts, because it does look like the road is paved for him to play just a ton of minutes again, and we've seen this guy put up points with a ton of minutes in the past.
Yep. I mean, I think he's a perfect player for this kind of team. I liked it when he was with San Jose and he was kind of getting all the minutes and sort of helping the young guys, right? Getting them the puck in good situations. Like I mentioned earlier, Mikael Granlund is one of the, like in terms of his microstats, he's one of the league leaders in high danger passes for per 60. Right? Like he's putting people in a lot of really good positions. And I know it's common sense, but if you're receiving a high danger pass, you have a higher percentage of putting that puck in the net, right? So for the layperson, okay. But yeah, I just like that Granlund has that in his game. And I really feel like, he's going to get power play 1 right out the gate. So, top 6 power play 1 on a team that you and I think both agree the power play will be a little bit better. Like even if it gets to like 15th best in the league in terms of goals for per 60, that'll play, right? And I think Granlund can beat his 12 power play points that he had last year in 58 games. I could see him as a 20 power play point guy. Did I project him for that? That's a good question. No, I projected him for 17 power play points, but I mean, still 61 points for Granny here. I've got him projected for 19 plus minutes. I think that's a big gamer right there, and someone that no one's really looking to acquire.
Yep. Yeah, sometimes it is the kind of boring veteran that is the best value come draft day.
You know that, Nathan.
All right, Cutter Gauthier next up here. Big projection, 45 goals, 30 assists, 75 points for me. 45 goals, 34 assists, rounded down to 78 points for you. Definitely a favorite, a player that I talked about ad nauseum leading into next year and delivered in a huge way, even more than I expected. But I do think that this is a guy who's going to get paid here, who's going to get a bigger opportunity in terms of the time on ice this season. I do think that probably it is going to be quote unquote second line with Granlund rather than getting up there with
Mhm.
Carlson, most likely. That would be the way that I would expect it to happen. That being said, they did try a bunch of different things. As you've mentioned, he was on a great line with McTavish and Seneca, and Joel Quenneville was like, enough with this greatness.
Yeah.
I'm going to put something else together. To be fair, I don't think that line played a lot of defense, but, you know, we don't care about
What's
defense. We
that?
want
Yeah,
more
this is
goals.
fantasy hockey for God's sake.
Either way, I think Gauthier represents a pretty safe 40 goal floor and upside for 50. I mean, if they just decide to go nuclear with Carlson Gauthier all year long, I do think Gauthier could look at 50, especially if he's on power play one. For reference, I did put him at 3 minutes on the power play and Granlund at 2 minutes 45 seconds. So I have Gauthier just kind of edging him out in terms of that power play projection, time on ice wise. And I do expect he'd be efficient there. So I think that there is still ceiling even on this projection for Gauthier.
Yep. Um, it's all gas here for Cutter Gauthier, and I love it. Like this is probably, since we've been doing the pod, this is one of your best calls. Like this is a guy you were on way early. I was there, but like not there. You know what I mean? Like not nuclear, like what he did last season. And if he got the actual deployment that his play warranted, we should have seen 50 goals from Cutter last year, right? Like this guy was on another level. So great call by you. And I'm a fan now of you and Cutter Gauthier, but mostly you. But yeah, 45 goals, that'll play. I think this is a player that should take another step here next year. The problem with Cutter Gauthier is, like you said, the defense, right? He doesn't play well on the defensive side of the puck. It's not what he's known for, and neither do his line mates, really. So it's a problem that needs to be solved, because I talked about Anaheim's defensive environment. It wasn't great, right? And Lucas Dostal had to catch bullets in his teeth to give these guys a chance every night, right? And he did. Lucas Dostal was great, but yeah, with these defensemen out of here, I am mildly concerned. But what we've seen from Cutter Gauthier so far to this point is that wherever he's deployed, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, all right, because Cutter Gauthier is going to do Cutter things. This guy's he's one of the best mid-range shooters I can think of. You know what I mean? And his one-timer on that power play, that's ridiculous. So, what was his power play percentage last year? 53%. Mr. Quenneville, no, please, thank you, God. Get him up above 60% power play share, and we're cooking. Like this guy had 11 power play goals, 19 power play points, should be a hell of a lot more than that. I've projected 23 power play points this year. Could be higher, like you said, if that power play can get the biz. But I really do feel like Cutter Gauthier and Leo Carlsson need to be sort of the keys there, right? They need to be the guys they're going to, Cutter in particular, right? Just like when Tage had that big year, scoring 20 power play goals on the flank. Like that's Cutter Gauthier. Okay, get this guy the puck in good positions and he'll just smash for you. So all that to say, I'm a big fan. I think he's going to take another step. I hope that the contract doesn't handcuff. I mean, it's going to, but I hope that the contract doesn't handcuff the Ducks that much so that they're able to get another defenseman in here, right? That can help facilitate play. But, I think it's wheels up for Cutter. I'm excited for him this year. Where are you drafting this guy? Because he's going sometimes in the third round, the fourth round. He's going before Carlson. Are you with that?
Yeah, I think Carlson being C only and Gauthier being wing eligible, left wing
He's a
eligible,
trifecta,
and
isn't he?
particular. It depends on your site. We'll see what we get on Yahoo this year too. It's always a guessing game that you'll never win, but I do think that there's an argument to be made to go in either direction. I think that Gauthier in the third round makes some sense to me. I'd be happy to draft him there in a lot of spots, especially if he fits the positionality I'm looking for at that point. All right, Beckett Seneca next up. I have him for 28 goals, 37 assists for 65 points. You have him for 25 goals, 42 assists, and 67 points. Seneca had a tremendous rookie year, kind of came out of nowhere, similar to how he was drafted higher than everybody expected. This is with 14 power play points, so imagine if this guy got power play time and was efficient with it. That would be another level possible here for Seneca as well. I am the most worried about Seneca, maybe out of all of these players, just because there's less track record here. His OHL career was I would say good, not great relative to other top end prospects. Obviously, the Ducks saw something in him that made him the third overall prospect in their eyes that year, and they've been proven right with this rookie year. But of all these players, it wouldn't be the most shocking to me if Seneca took a little bit of a step back this year. I'm not projecting it that way. Obviously, I'm projecting him to do something similar with a similar role to what he got last year. But I do think that there's a little bit of variance here. And to that point, he could also go the other way. He could get more power play time. He could score 70 plus points this year. That's also a possibility. How do you see this, Blake? And where would you put the possibility of a big plus or big minus on these projections?
Yeah, I like that. I think that, yeah, this is probably a riskier player than some that we've talked about so far because of the range of outcomes, right? But what I'm seeing under the hood for a player like Beckett Seneca, who played, what did he played all? Did he play all 82? Yeah, I mean, geez, like he really dominated. Like his microstat profile is off the chain, right, in terms of chances per 60, shots per 60. So he's really good at generating individual shots and chances. And he played a lot of the season with Mason McTavish, who is another guy who was really big in high danger passes per 60. And then the other times he was playing with Granlund, right? So Beckett Seneca is the guy on the end of those high danger passes. And I feel like there's a little bit of runway for him to be even more efficient. This guy only shot 11.7% last year. So I think there's another couple percentage points there. What if he goes ham, 15%, 16%? We could be looking at a 35 to 40 goal player here. Not projecting it that way, obviously, but I just like what I'm seeing here. Not to mention, he's elite off the rush. Like this guy, zone entries per 60, controlled entries per 60, entries with chances per 60. He does that. And, almost, just behind Carlsson, really, as one of the best on the team. I think he's second best on the team in those metrics. So I love that. That says to me, this guy is an individual play driver. You can kind of plug him in wherever. And I think there's potential that he gets moved up the lineup, but there's also potential that he's line 2, power play 2 for the entire season. And yeah, that can maybe kind of hamper his fantasy outlook. So all that to say, I think 55 to 65 points, I feel really good with Beckett Seneca there, even though I projected him for 67, which is kind of like, yeah, that's wish casting, but I'm here for it.
Well, the nice thing about Seneca is you're probably going to find out right away, because if he's up with Carlson out of the gate because of the Terry injury, then you're going to be loving life and you feel pretty
Yes.
good about that regardless. And so I think there is a scenario where it's still worth the risk, even if it is plus minus on that projection.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going to get steamed up draft boards too high either, just considering everything else that's gone on around Anaheim. I think he's kind of the forgotten guy. And so I think it could very well still be worth the swing on draft day if it's a double digit round acquisition. 4 players, I guess, from the bottom 6 that I'll throw in here. I projected Ryan Poehling for 13 goals, 28 assists, and 41 points. Alex Killorn for 20 goals, 17 assists, 37 points. AJ Greer, the new acquisition, for 15 goals, 18 assists, 33 points. And you had Frank Vetrano for 13 goals, 14 assists, rounding down to 27 points. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time here. I think Poehling and Killorn could both see some second power play unit time. Vetrano maybe. Quenneville hated Vetrano last year, like truly despised the man. At least that's what we can glean from his ice time.
Yeah, I mean, I read a little bit on Vetrano, like what the hell happened last year, and yeah, he was moved down the lineup, that's for sure. But Quenneville had history with Vetrano. He had him in Florida there, and he likes the guy. I read lots about what Quenneville has said about Vetrano. So yeah, he definitely didn't hate him, but he quietly moved him down the lineup, right, and was consistent about that. And then I read that Vetrano had kind of a personal tragedy. I think his brother died last year. So, and then he came back and his ice time was 9 minutes, so he had an injury then and his brother died. And so, yeah, it's a hard season to judge for Frank Vetrano, but my projection is what it is. I'm not married to it, right? I honestly don't think he's going to be on Anaheim this upcoming year. I think they have to find a way to either buy him out or trade him and trade good picks as well. So someone picks up the salary, but yeah, it's too bad. It's too bad because I think Frank Vetrano is a guy. He's a big time chucker. he's a guy that can be valuable maybe on a worse team, but Anaheim leveled up and they didn't really need his services. I do want to shout out Ryan Poehling really quick. I think that's a guy that I'll probably stream from the Ducks. Like he's amazing at blocking for a forward. This guy, like that's something you should know about Ryan Poehling. He's great shorthanded as well. I think that's a guy that could potentially be moved up the lineup in certain areas and probably do something. I bet he has like a kind of a 40-point ceiling, which will play with the good periffs that he's bringing. So I'm a fan of him in real life, and I think that there's a little bit of value there for fantasy.
All right, let's talk about the defense. There's one in particular that's pretty fun. Jackson Lacombe I have for 13 goals, 52 assists, 65 points. You have him for 11 goals, 54 assists, and 65 points as well if you round up. So I'm pretty into Jackson Lacombe. I just don't see a scenario, at least with the roster the way it looks as we record this here on July 19th. If the roster is anything like the way it looks right now, I don't see how Jackson Lacombe isn't skating. I have him projected for 25 minutes and 45 seconds average time on ice, ton of even strength time, ton of power play time, ton of penalty kill time. He's going to do it all for this team, and I don't see how they get away from it anytime soon. So it feels like actually a pretty safe projection to be at least in the 60-point range. You know, there's always the efficiency question, some puck luck one way or the other, but I feel pretty good about Jackson Lacombe being in the 60-plus point range at the end of the year.
Yeah, that feels really good. Double-digit goals too. I think he's a lock for that. This guy's he's a really efficient shooter. But something I've been digging in on, and I've been doing my whole projections based on when I'm looking at defensemen, is this conversation I had with Corey Schneider at All Three Zones when I had him interviewed. And we kind of got into this conversation about this stat that he tracks, or I think it's a accumulation of a couple different stats, but it's called rushed exits. And basically what that is how efficient they are when the puck is dumped in, or they're going behind the net to get the puck, and what they do with it. Like how successful are they, when they're being rushed? Like, can they exit successfully? And the idea is you have a guy who's really good at rushed exits, and you have another guy who's really good at kind of rushing the puck, and you pair those two guys together. And then the guy who rushes the puck gets the benefit of the player that has a really good rushed exits. All that to say, Jackson Lacombe is third in Corey's track data in rushed exits. This guy, what that means is when he's pressured on the forecheck, he doesn't give it up. He makes the right play. He's not flipping it out. He makes a good play back there. He makes a good pass. But pair that with the fact that he can rush the puck like a hot damn. Like Jackson Lacombe is bringing a lot to the table. And like you said, I added a minute on to what he had last year. He averaged 24 minutes, 15 seconds. I got him for just under 25 and a half. Like, I think this guy could be one of the league leaders in ice time by the end of the year based on kind of what's going on here. So, yeah, I'm a big fan. I hope that the Anaheim power play gets going. That was something that when they brought John Carlsson in, I was like, no, that's kind of stinky, right? Lacombe was still fine, but, Carlson's out of there. Power play one is his with the bullet, and there's no way they could sign anybody or trade for anybody. Really, that would be better than Jackson Lacombe on power play one at this point. So I'm a big fan. I got him for 21 power play points, just a massive year. And I think the real question is where you're drafting him, right? Like, and I'm excited to get into D tiers at some point here, but yeah, where are you comfortable drafting Lacombe? I remember I took some flack last year drafting him at 70 or something like that. So I was like, what are you doing? Like, well, that's Jackson Lacombe. He got 58 points, for God's sake.
Yeah, I think we're probably talking about him being in that kind of Adam Fox-ish tier. When it comes to draft time, probably a little bit more peripheral weight with Lacombe, and Fox will have for more points overall. So I think probably slotting in right around Adam Fox, probably fourth round, maybe late fourth round is where that tier will start to come off the board. You hope that you maybe don't have to spend that pick in particular on Lacombe, but honestly, I feel pretty locked in on this projection, so I don't think I'd hate it at that point. Pavel Minchikov, he is going for 10 goals, 21 assists, 31 points for me, 9 goals, 24 assists, 33 points for you. Let's lump in Tristan Luneau here because obviously there's some interplay between their roles. I have him for 9 goals, 23 assists, 32 points. You have him for 6.5 goals, 25.5 assists, comes to 32 points. So pretty similar projections overall here. I think really the only way either of these guys has a ton of relevance is if Lacombe goes down. and they start to get a much bigger role, even strength and or power play. The way that I'm reading the tea leaves is Minchikov was one of their bigger penalty killers last year. Remove Truba, remove Gudas, and John Carlson for the time that he was there. And now I think you're looking at Minchikov just being a guy who doesn't come off the ice in penalty kill situations, 2.5, maybe 3 minutes of penalty kill time for this team every single night. And I think that maybe that opens the door for Luno to be the guy that they put on power play too, just to ease a little bit of that just raw minutes load off of Minchikov for a guy that Quenneville wasn't all that excited to play at even strength every single night either. And now has a $7+ million contract to show for it. I'm worried about both of them. I don't think you're drafting either of them on draft night, but it is something to keep in mind who's getting that power play time and who would be next up if Lacombe were to go down at any point in the season.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add there. I think, they're both in line for power play too. We have to see what shakes out. Again, though, I do like Mintyukov a little bit more. I think he's a little more established, but he's going to get a career high in ice time this year, and we'll see what he does with it, right? Because he hasn't been trusted so far in his career, and now he's got 7 million reasons that they need to kind of trust him. So we'll see what he's able to bring to the table. I hope he has a big year.
All right, top 3 targets, Blake. Hit me with it.
Give it to me, Neil. Oh, damn. We're at 45 minutes already. This is all right. Don't worry, folks. We won't talk about Calgary that long. Okay. Top 3 targets. You got to go Leo Carlsson for me at number 1. Again, still with the value, 4th, 5th round, Leo Carlsson for a point per game player plus, right? Like with ceiling for more. I like that. I've got Jackson Lacombe as my 2nd. Obviously, we just mentioned the reasons why this guy's going to get all the minutes. And Beckett Seneca is my 3rd, just because of what I mentioned as well, the potential for offense, the underlying microstat profile, his poise that he played with in his first year, his ability to generate expected goals for, right? I think there's a little bit of headroom in terms of efficiency with the shooting, and I just really like the player.
Right, for myself, Lacombe is going to be number 1, Carlson going to be number 2, and I will throw Troy Terry there as the number 3. I do think he's going to be there with like your last pick of your drafts, and you can throw him on IR and forget about it. And if he comes back straight back to top line, top power play, and he's doing stuff, then you feel good about that.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Boston, let's get into it. Key departures here, Victor Arvidsson and Jonas Korpisalo. Key arrivals, JJ Peterka comes over for a pair of first-round picks, and James Hagens, I think, will make his impact in the NHL felt in his rookie year, and Will Borgen they acquire from the New York Rangers. What do you think is the biggest story here? I mean, it's easy to say Peterka, but do you think that this is a team that now looks more dangerous with these new players coming in?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they look more dangerous. It's kind of a lateral move. I think with more ceiling, because we're looking at JJ Peterka as potentially the Arvidsson replacement, right? And JJ Peterka is a better player than Arvidsson, I think, for all intents and purposes. I think we would agree on that, or has more potential. So I really like the addition there of Peterka, but I think the loss of Victor Arvidsson, see at the party, Victor, he's partying right now. He's partying in Detroit with no captain. But yeah, I think the loss of Arvidsson might go unnoticed, by some people, but his line that he played with Casey Middlestat and Pavel Zacha, they were quietly one of the best lines in the entire league in terms of raw expected goals for, right? They were 11th best in that metric. Would that surprise you, Nathan? Casey Middlestat, the man did one pull-up. Did he even do one? I don't know. Have you ever just done a pull-up to like failure and like your arms are all shaky and you're sweating and there's like people watching? You know what I'm talking about?
I have, yes. It's very fun.
It's good to hear. Okay. But anyways, I think, yes, that was one of the best second lines in the league. And I think an underrated part of Boston's success. So yeah, the loss of Arvidsson, that's fine. But yeah, Peterka getting that in here, I think he has true breakout potential. This is a young player that's been sidelined throughout his career. So hopefully Boston kind of gives him that real run there. But yeah, James Hagens, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on Hagens, because that's a player I haven't projected yet. But I'm interested to see how you see him fitting into the system here.
All right, before we get into the players too much, let's talk about the coach here. Marco Sturm returns for his 2nd season. So obviously Boston has a big turnaround last year, just tremendously efficacious at 5v5 scoring. Their goaltending is terrific again with Jeremy Swayman. And how much of that can we really attribute to Sturm, and how much is just, an incredible shooting percentage bender, an incredible season from Jeremy Swayman? How much of that can we really, just put it in the bank and put it into our projections again this year? I think that's a big question with this team, and one that we alluded to when we did the shocking statistics episode last week, where this is the team where it feels the hardest to believe that some of those shooting percentages will stick around this year.
Yep, for sure. I mean, efficacious, all right, means producing or capable of producing a desired effect. All right, that's 2 for 2. Well done, Nathan. Yeah, this team was uber efficient last year. I think they were one of the top teams in the league, if not the top team in terms of finishing their chances, right? That's a tough act to follow, right? So for us to go ahead and project like, yeah, they'll be number one in finishing again. No, I don't like that, especially the way this roster is constructed. So in terms of the coaching, though, one of the things I really like we have to give Marco Sturm his flowers for how the team performed last year. One of the things when you look at the roster, it's not exactly tip top, right? It wasn't. I mean, you got a true superstar in Pasternak, and a true number one defenseman in McAvoy, and a true number one goalie in Jeremy Swayman. So let's put that out there. They have one elite player at each position there. But I don't know. A lot of coaches, when they're faced with what this roster looks like, I think would kind of rely more on like effort-based play, right? Like dump and chase, simplifying things, i.e. Ryan Huska of Calgary Flames, who we'll talk later. But what Sturm did is he encouraged his team to hold on to the puck a little bit more, slow the game down, right? And play, kind of to their instincts, right? And I think that was really, really smart. That was a smart thing to do, and helped with the efficiency of this team. They're turning, medium chances into good chances into great chances, right? And that's why the shooting percentage was higher, and some of the best, if not the best in the league. So all that to say, can they do it again? I don't want to rely on that, and I can't in good faith do that when I'm projecting these players. So do I think it's going to fall off a cliff? No, but I don't know. How's he going to adapt? How's he going to adapt this year? And then, like I said, you lose Arvidsson, you lose weirdly to say, but one of the best second lines in the league last year in terms of offensive generation. So yeah, what does it look like this year? How's he going to adapt?
I think it's great questions. Yeah, I've been in general trying to be more lenient on projecting regression, because obviously we've seen the shooting percentage increase across the league as more teams are adopting this kind of style. And it was definitely a distinct difference when Marco Sturm took over. And so I have been trying to, not overcorrect in those regression projections. But I do think that this is a team, when you just look at the raw talent or lack thereof compared to some other teams, it feels harder to believe in some of the percentages that we saw from this team last year. Let's dig into the power play. Pasternak, McAvoy, Geeky look like locks, at least for me. Lindholm has been the faceoff guy here. I don't really see that changing, most likely. Pavel Zacha was the most common fourth forward on this power play last year, but obviously JJ Peterka has been acquired. They gave up a couple of picks. They're paying him a good amount of money. And does he kind of force his way in there, or at least, maybe they split it throughout the year. They go back and forth a little bit. That could happen as well. How do you view any of that? Do you have any issues with my locks? You think Lindholm's back there?
Yeah, it's that's an interesting piece there. I think we're going to continue to see Lindholm there for the faceoff role, like you said. And he did have some decent success in that bumper spot there. I mean, I think, what did he have? Like 20 power play points. To me, I think the real conversation is Peterka versus Zacha. And what their roles look like. And I projected Peterka to be there, but I projected Zacha for more power play points. So I don't know. It's a mind bender, but I feel like they're probably going to swap back and forth until someone can sort of lock that down. But when something I like to look at is, how does this team view the player? And, we heard a lot of Pavel Zacha trade rumors out there so far this offseason, people looking to maybe acquire Pavel Zacha. He's got 1 year left on his deal. And meanwhile, they picked up JJ Peterka and signed him, to term here. So, that doesn't mean everything, right? But I think it means a little bit, right? I mean, Pavel Zacha, we'll see. Like, where do they see him fitting in on this team? And if they don't, are they really going to trot him out there on power play 1 when they've got Peterka in the wings? That's also left-handed, that can also play, kind of goal line on the power play where Pavel Zacha plays. Like, I feel like that's going to be a seamless sort of transition if you want Peterka in there. So yeah, all that to say, I think Peterka is going to get it. I think they're going to swap back and forth.
Yeah, I have Peterka projected for 15 more seconds average time on ice on the power play than I
Nice.
have Zaka for. So I'm kind of hedging my bets in both directions there. But I do think Zaka looks like the most likely to come off if Peterka does get on there. The other one I want to make room for and just shout out because I do think it's a distinct possibility is James Hagen's potentially forcing his way onto power play one. Probably not out of camp or anything like that, but if he grows over time throughout the season, I could see a scenario in which they decide he's actually a guy that they would like to have out there for his puck distribution skills. So I want to leave room for that and just put it out there just in case it hits. I can, come back and point at this. And
Oh,
say,
we
I
will.
told you
Don't
so.
worry. Insufferable, Nathan.
All right, let's dig in on the projections here. Start with Elias Lindholm. I have him for 22 goals, 36 assists, round that down to 57 points. You have him for 18 goals, 32 assists, and 50 points on the dot there. Had to do the mental math there quickly. Elias Lindholm, obviously, I have a bigger projection here. I think most of this is me believing A, the power play role is pretty secure, and B, I think that he's stuck with Pasternak again all year, and that actually works out pretty well for everybody involved. So I think that that's most of it. I mean, Lindholm had 48 points in 69 games last year. Games played is nice, but that's not a number to write home about. But you project that out to 84 games, add 15 more games. I think he scores the extra 9 points there to get to 57. So I'm kind of just leaving him in line with last year, and I think that's actually possible for Lindholm here. Curious your thoughts, Blake, why you hate him so much.
Because he left the Canucks. How dare you, sir? We had a dynasty in the wings, and this guy just goes to Boston. But yeah, I don't know. I think that Lindholm has kind of a shaky grasp on the top center position there. I think that's the way I projected him. But I don't know. This guy has not really been able to generate anything 5-on-5, even with the past exposure, right? Yeah, he had some good numbers on the power play. I think that's good. I'm not taking him off there, but I don't know. I feel like he may, at this point in his career, just with his previous injuries and sort of his play style currently, maybe he's more of a middle six kind of shutdown guy, right? Like I could see Zaka jumping up to the top line. I could see Fraser Minton getting a look there on the top line, if they want to even things out, right? And maybe have Lindholm as more of a shutdown kind of line, right? But that's really it. I think there's a little bit more variance there, and I'm not just locking him in to the top line there with Pasta. And again, like I said, even with Pasta, his even strength production, not great. So yeah, I'm just not a fan of the player. You dig in on the underlying microstats too, like it's putrid. It's like this guy's like he's like a step above Chandler Stevenson out there. You know what I mean? And that's about the biggest burn I can give a player for fantasy, right? So that's my thoughts there. I mean, I think to me this is a streamer at best at this point in his career, and with this roster construction.
All right. Next up is Morgan Geeky. I think that Geeky is an interesting one to talk about as well. I have him for 37 goals, 31 assists, 68 points. You have him for 38 goals, but only 23 assists and 61 points. So pretty big difference there between us, but not on the goal scoring front, more on the offense involvement front, which is interesting. I think most of it for me, it's been a few seasons now of him being a really high efficiency converter. I think that they have kind of figured out here that he needs to be with Pasternak to get the best version of Morgan Geeky. I mean, Pasternak will get the best version of any player he plays with for sure, but I think Geeky and his kind of one dimension that he brings to the table are best suited being with a guy who can bring that out of him, and you can't really rely on that being there with a lot of the other guys in this roster. So I actually kind of view the way that this roster is currently constructed to be pretty promising for Morgan Geeky, for him to get a fair amount of Pasta exposure. And if Pasta scores a few more goals, then Geeky's obviously in on a few more assists, most likely. So that's kind of where I landed. What do you think, Blake? Why do you hate Morgan Geeky?
I would never hate Morgan Geeky. All right. The nerd alert. Oh God. Poindexter's in the house. But yeah, I think all that you said makes some sense. I think to maximize Geeky, you need to get him with David Pasternak. But I would love to see JJ Peterka and Pasta together. I feel like Peterka is kind of like, I'm talking about JJ Peterka right now instead of Geeky, but this is our show, folks. We can do what we want. But Peterka to me is like, he's kind of like David Pastrnak light, I think, in the way that he can sort of morph his game into whatever's needed. So if he needs to be a facilitator, he can do that. If he needs to be a shooter, he can do that. I think that Boston wants David Pastrnak to be more of a shooter this year. David Pastrnak wants to be more of a shooter this year. And I think if you're playing him with Morgan Geeky, it's like you're deferring to Geeky at that point, and Geeky is the one at the end of passes. And I feel like, yeah, you would shave some ceiling off of Morgan Geeky by taking him off the line with Pasta, but I still believe that Geeky is a player that he's an efficient shooter. I know that the narrative is he's better with Pasta, and I agree with that, but I don't think he's nothing without him. I really don't. I feel like Morgan Geeky has established himself as a player that is an efficient shooter. As long as he has some guys that can sort of get him the puck in good positions, right? And I've got him projected as the second line right winger with Casey Middlestat and Pavel Zacha, right? Which Pavel Zacha and Casey Middlestat, both good facilitators, right? It's not David Pastrnak level, obviously, but I just feel like Geeky is. I'm projecting him to spend more time on the second line than the top line this season. And that's really the main factor there.
Right. Let's go to Pastrnak then. I have him for 39 goals, 72 assists, and 112 points if I round up. You have him for 39 goals, 65 assists, and 104 points. So again, you hate this player. I think that for me, let's go through it for a quick second. I had even strengths. Let's talk about some of the percentages that we have Pastrnak for. So I have him for an 85% IPP, obviously a huge role in that offense. I'm skating 16 minutes, 45 seconds, and I have him at a 14% on-ice shooting percentage, which is obviously among the highest that you'll see out there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm close. I have an 81% IPP, and my on-ice shooting percentage is down a little bit. It's 12.89. So instead of the 14, I've got, shave off the top there with the on-ice shooting percentage. And I've got him for 1645 as well. So a lot of that, again, is to me just this potential regression we're talking about, right? Let's say you do get Peterka up there. Now you got a new line mate you're trying to figure things out with. Like, I've still got him projected for a big season, right? 104 points. But yeah, like how are you getting there when he had with this really efficient season that the Bruins had? How are you getting there with even more? Like he had what did he have last year? 106 point pace, and you're pacing him now with 2 extra games for like 112. Like what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I have 38 power play points. I think he can be a little bit more efficient there, be a little bit bigger role perhaps. I think Peterka gives them another option that they didn't have last year that could potentially raise the floor of that power play a little bit as well. And so, I think that Pastrnak is a guy that just continually exceeds my expectations,
that's
and
true.
I'm kind of getting on the other side of that this year. Maybe I overshot it a little. I'm willing to take another look at it because it is a lofty projection for sure.
I like it though.
I just feel like you can't go wrong with David Pastrnak. At the end of the day, in your fantasy drafts, you're not going to be mad if you spend a pick on him in the middle of the first round. Casey Middlestat next up. I have him for 17 goals, 30 assists, and 46 points with a round down. 17 goals, 24 assists, and 41 points with the round down for you. I don't like Casey Middlestat. I don't think there's a ceiling with this player. I have him projected for under 100 shots on goal. He doesn't hit, he doesn't block, he doesn't do anything that we give a damn about for fantasy hockey, so I will never draft Casey Middlestat. Talk to me about Casey Middlestat, Blake.
No notes. I projected him for less than you. So do 2 pull-ups and then we'll talk. Okay, Casey Middlestat. but yeah, I mean, he is a good facilitator. Let's agree on that. I think that, yeah, that's fine. And like I said, he was on a great line. Like that line really gelled and generated a ton of offense. But Casey Middlestat was kind of the third man on that line. Like it was Victor Arvidsson and Pavel Zacha that were really eating when it came to offense there. Casey Middlestat was kind of the connector of that, right? And now he's going to get a new line mate depending on where he goes. Whatever. It's a streamer that we're interested in. If somehow we got on power play 1, we're streaming him in. But yeah, I mean, 42 points, that feels I don't even know about that. Right. That's shout out to him. He's got a beautiful head of hair. Let's agree on that as well.
All right, Pavel Zacha, 20 goal, 34 assists, 54 point projection for me. 21 goal, 33 assists, 54 projection for you. Basically, I've shaved off from 22 power play points to 11 power play points, and that's basically all of it for me.
Yep.
I think that most of the part that I find them. What I find the most unbelievable about what Pavel Zacha did last year was actually the power play stuff. Don't think that happens again, even if he is up there for most of the season. I don't think most of that happens again. Again, I just feel like we saw the best possible version of Pavel Zacha last year, particularly in the goal scoring department. And this is probably the number one player on the team that I think is primed for regression, especially if JJ Peterka does take away some of that power play time from him.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like this guy, what did he shoot last year? Like 23%. Prime Andrei Kuzmenko. All right. That's, I don't know if I'm here for that, Pavel, but, hopefully if he could do it again in his contract year, bang. But I think he's primed for regression here. I believe in his role on the power play a little bit more. I projected him for 17 power play points there, even with like a limited, if it's him, if it's Peterka, I think it kind of got split between them. But Boston's power play last year was really good. They were 10th best in the league in terms of goals for per 60. So that'll play, right? And is it going to get better? Maybe not. I don't think it's going to get worse. So yeah, I feel like Zacha's role in that power play, especially if he goes up there, like he should still be able to put up some points. That said, I think at even strength is where he kind of loses some for me, right? Like I mentioned again about that line, like what does it even look like? Does he move up with Pasta? Does he even play center? Does he go on the left side? I don't know. So a lot of variance there with Zacha, definitely going to be a regression. And I've still projected him for 15.7 shooting percentage. I'm going to have to look at that. I don't know if I could do that, but a lot of that was on the power play, which, we'll see what happens.
All right, JJ Peterka, I have for 28 goals, 37 assists, 65 points. You have him for 30 goals, 29 assists, and 59 points. I think Peterka is a very interesting candidate on this team. Yeah. Even if he plays this role, like Victor Arvidsson made this role on this line look pretty interesting last year. Arvidsson's a bit of a different brand of player in terms of just being more of a chucker and less of an efficient player than Peterka has proven to be in his past. I also am somewhat buying into a narrative here with Peterka. I think that, he gets traded from Buffalo where he was kind of, I don't want to say run out of town, but it was clear that they didn't really like what he was bringing to the table in terms of some of his off-puck commitments to playing both directions. And he goes to Utah, and some of that happens to him again there, I think, and he kind of gets demoted down the lineup as the season goes on. I think that grows you up pretty fast. Maybe he got a little bit over his skis at some point in terms of what he thought he could be, and I think this is a season where he's going to really look to reinvent himself and put his best foot forward. So maybe there is a little bit of narrative playing in my head as I went through this projection here. But I think that even in this case with Mittelstadt and Zacha, I think those are both players that can get Peterka the puck, and this is a guy who's proven that he can be an efficient player, that he can be the line driver in and of his own right. I think that's something he's definitely capable of. You get the narrative where they give up 2 first-round picks for him. How are they not going to play this guy for a good amount of minutes at even strength and potentially on a top power play unit? I only have him for 17 power play points. If he gets into the mid-20s, you can see a ceiling here for 70-plus points. I'm pretty interested in JJ Peterka, and obviously we have even the more nuclear scenario. What if he plays with Pasternak all year?
Yeah, hell yeah. I know my projection's lower than yours, but I feel like mine's closer to floor. Like it's a safer projection, but I'm with you. I'm right with you. JJ Peterka, 65 points. I'm with you. JJ Peterka, 70 points, right? And with ceiling for more, like you said, depending on what goes on. Like I said, I think this is a player that has the ability to do whatever he needs to offensively, whether it's rush the puck, he can do that. Whether it's be the main shooter, he can do that. We've seen that in his even strength numbers in the past, like his rate stats. This guy can approach, 10 shots on goal per 60 at 5-on-5. He's done that before, right? But he's also been a facilitator, right? When he played, in his most successful season, he was playing with Tage, right? And he was more of the facilitator there, 41 assists that year, right? Playing a lot with Tage, right? Who is the shooter. So I just think this guy is a really, really good offensive player. And like you said, 2 first-round picks for Boston to pick him up. Yeah, let's see what we're doing here. I think there's a lot of outcomes where he can absolutely smash my projection here. And to be honest too, I don't think that defense is really his problem. I don't know what the problem was. In Buffalo, it seemed like that trade never made sense to me. And then when he went to Utah, it's like they just had too many guys that were similar, right? And they just prioritized other guys, right? Like Gunther, Cooley, Keller. These guys were all getting prioritized over Peterka. But I think Peterka, if he would have been prioritized, he would have had just as much success as these guys. So to me, this is a guy that is a new face in a new place, which is one of the reasons I'm a little bit lower on him. But I always think about JT Miller when he came to the Canucks. Like it's a guy that under the hood, like this is a guy doing all the right things. He just needs opportunity. And I think there's opportunity here for JJ Peterka. And I'm pretty damn stoked. Like top six, power play one, especially if he can lock down power play one, I'm very, very interested in Peterka. I projected him for 15 power play points, but if he's on power play one, we're looking at 20 plus.
Absolutely. I went through the third line here. Fraser Minton, I have for 17 goals, 20 assists, 37 points. Maybe an Elias Lindholm light kind of player in the making here with Fraser Minton. Murat Kuznetsov, his most common line mate from last year, 13 goals, 18 assists for 31 points. James Hagens, I think, is the interesting one to talk about and highlight a little bit here. I have his projection at 22 goals, 25 assists, and rounding up to 47 points. This is a guy who was 10th in NCAA scoring last year as a sophomore. So obviously you have some older players who are ahead of him on that list as well. I think that this is a player who, in a best case scenario, comes in, really fits into Marco Sturm's system and what they're trying to do as a guy who likes to play with the puck on his stick and likes to make plays. I think there's a real chance that James Hagens is just an all systems go fit from day one. I don't know that he's going to get big time minutes right away or, play on the top line or do any of those extreme things. But I am leaving room in my mind as of this time to say, hey, if I start to see that time on ice go up, if I start to see, a power play chance here or there, it looks like he's the next guy up for the power play. All those kinds of things are bookmarks that I'm looking for with James Hagens because I do believe that there is a ceiling with this prospect. Maybe he doesn't hit it in year one. Maybe he never hits it. But I do think that based on everything we've seen from him so far, a very highly ballyhooed prospect coming out as well in his draft year. Lots of stuff to like about the underlying profile with James Hagens, and I'm pretty interested to see what he could be at the NHL level.
Hell yeah. No, I'm excited to watch that player. It's definitely a player of interest that, like you said, if things start to break right, we need to get on that, right? Because this is a guy that does have a ceiling and can facilitate really well. He's got a great shot. And there's a potential pathway for him to get good offensive minutes that can help us for fantasy. So I really like that. And then again, like I said about Fraser Minton, I'm just watching. I'm watching to see what they do. Like, does Marco Sturm want to lean into this young group a little bit more? Like, I'm hesitant to say that. Like, I feel like we're right in projecting this as the third line, but Minton could play in the top six. Hagens could even play in the top six. You know what I mean? Maybe they want him up there. Get Casey Middlestat the hell out of my sight, right? Like, you get Hagens in the top six. So those are all things we need to be watching in training camp. And then once season starts, if these guys make the team.
Yeah, I will say Hagens and Peterka, the two reasons I didn't back off the efficiency as
Love it.
much
Okay.
as I probably would have if not for those two acquisitions or incoming forward additions. Let's go to the defense. Hampus Lindholm, 6 goals, 29 or 23 assists and 29 points rather. 5 goals, 25 assists, 30 points for you. I don't think we need to spend much time there. Probably get some power play 2 time. The underlying stuff, the shots on goal, 122 shots on goal, 20 hits, 123 blocks for me. Nothing special there. Maybe you stream him in a deep league. Charlie McAvoy is the belle of the ball when it comes to the Boston defense for sure. I'm projected for 13 goals, 51 assists, and 64 points. You have him for 13 goals, 46 assists, and 59 points. Yes, did the math there correctly. So yeah, I think that this is an interesting player. Had a massive breakout last year, and that's hard to really put together in my mind at least, because yeah, the efficiency went through the roof. I do think this is a player who's going to regress from what he had last year, but what he had last year was 61 points in 69 games. Again, the games played being pretty nice, but I don't think that kind of level of production is here to stay. But I do kind of think that another full season on this top power play, I think this power play could be even a little better, as I've alluded to, if Peterka stays up there and is an instant fit. I think there are scenarios here where Charlie McAvoy has another great year for fantasy.
Yep. I love McAvoy and I love his value on draft boards. Like, this is a guy, if you're missing out on these top tier D, even some of the second tier D, like McAvoy's still out there. And he has 60-point potential, in my opinion. I don't think people realize how elite McAvoy is in terms of just his actual gameplay. Like, this guy's above average in all three zones, right? He's back receiving the puck in the D zone. He's happy skating it out. He's entering the zone himself, leading to chances. He can make stretch passes. He does all that stuff. He's great in transition. All this stuff that helps this team, make the playoffs last year, right? One thing to note about McAvoy, he is starting the season with a 6-game suspension after broken hand in the playoffs there from Zach the Butler Benson. Oh, buddy, what are you doing? But yeah, he's getting that suspension, so that's fine. But I'm definitely in on Charlie McAvoy. This is a guy that I just think he's still underrated. Right. This is not a guy you think of like, I got to get Charlie McAvoy in my drafts. Right. But this is a player that's going to be available after 70, might be available after 80. And to me, I would even take him as my first D. I mean, that's not ideal, but if I'm like loading up on offensive wingers and centers and McAvoy's there for like my 6th, 7th, or 8th pick, I'm slamming that. So I'm a big fan of McAvoy. He's a beefer to boot, should be like 100 block guy, career high in power play points last year, and potentially, even a better power play this year, which I agree with you on.
All right, Nikita Zadorov, just 3 goals, 19 assists, 22 points for me. 4 goals, 18 assists, 22 points for you. Obviously, the interesting piece with Zadorov is the potential bangers. 202 hits, 105 blocks, and 153 penalty minutes for me. That's what you're interested in Zadorov for. Low the other guy who might see some power play time on this Boston Blue line. I'm for 7 goals, 23 assists, 30 points. You have him for 7 goals, 23 assists, 30 points. Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I at one point was a little more interested in the ceiling for Low It really does feel like he stalled out a little bit here and might project as more of a third pair power play 2 kind of player moving forward. Mm-hmm. We'll see if he's able to take another step. Still a young player, but it was a disappointing season for him. I'm not super excited about the fantasy outlook moving forward.
Yeah, another guy that was in trade rumors there as well, like people kicking tires on Mason Lowry to see if they can snag him. Yeah, it's a reclamation project almost at this point. I mean, he's not fallen way off, but to your point, yeah, I remember talking about him like, hey, this is a guy that looks good under the hood. If he gets some opportunity, we're interested for sure. And yeah, that's been muted a little bit. I do think he's going to be the power play 2 guy over Hampus Lindholm. So whatever that's worth, if McAvoy goes down, which he tends to do, I don't know. I'm looking at Mason Lowry. I'll say that.
All right, top 3 targets, Blake. Give it to me.
Give it to me, Neil. Oh, damn it, Neil. Stop giving it to me. I got too much. It didn't make any sense. All right, that's fine. It never does. Okay. Top 3 targets for me for Boston. Jason Peterka. Hell yeah. Get him in your life for all the reasons we mentioned. Charlie McAvoy is my number 2 for all the reasons I mentioned. I think there's extreme value there for a guy that shouldn't be going that late. And then the Geekster, Morgan Geekie, with Pasta, without Pasta. I think this is a player that is still valuable for fantasy because he's an elite shooter, right? And obviously with Pasta is better, but even without, I still think this is a 30-goal player.
For myself, JJ Peterka, number 1, James Haggins, number 2, and Morgan Geekie, number 3. I think it'll be interesting because Geekie had such a tremendous start to the year, but then really fell off hard in the second half, had a little bit of a bounce back at the very end of the year. But I think that there will be a lot of fantasy managers who feel like they were led on by Morgan Geekie and that he wasn't the player who he was at the beginning of the year. And so I do think that he'll actually be a pretty good value on draft day in a lot of places.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we're halfway through. That means I want to talk to you about the Apples and Ginos Patron League. You can go right now to applesandginos.com/APL and get all the info you need there. Basically, if you want to join the Apples and Ginos Patron League, you go to the Apples and Ginos Patreon. You sign up for one of the 3 tiers, APL only, Apples, or Ginos tiers. That'll get you access into the APL. You head over to the Discord. You go to the APL registration channel, click the join button, and you're entered. It's just that simple. This year we are planning a whole bunch of extra stuff behind the scenes. We're making it bigger and better, and we're super excited. We're adding even Crossing the Streams mini game where you're going to be able to pick streamers against Blake and I and against everybody else across the APL, and we'll have additional stuff and leaderboards and all sorts of stuff going on for that throughout the season. It's going to be a lot of extra on top of just a fantastically competitive fantasy hockey league. Obviously, there's tiered format. Blake, you and I both fell down to tier 2 this year, so we'll be pushing ourselves back to get back to tier 1 this year. That'll be a narrative that we'll be talking about all year long, I'm sure. But yeah, anybody who wants to come join us, go check out applesandginos.com/APL for more info. All right, Blake, you ready for Buffalo?
You betcha, sweet bippy buddy.
All right, let's do it. Let's talk about some of these departures. They are many. The Sabres had to let go Alex Tuch, Bowen Byram, Jordan Greenway, Michael Kesselring, Devin Levi. Obviously, the first 2 there, the most concerning depth-wise. But they do have some arrivals. Olin Zellweger comes over from Anaheim there. Consta Helenius came on in the playoffs and was an instant hit and looks to be a full-time member of the squad this year after a great AHL season. Louis Crevier comes over in the Bowen Byram trade with Chicago and is kind of a shutdown D to kind of replace at least Michael Kesselring. And David Kampf is also acquired as a depth forward option. How do you feel about Buffalo's overall situation? Like on paper, it feels pretty bad to lose Alex Tuch and not really replace him with anybody unless you're assuming Helenius will instantly replace Tuch's veteran presence on this squad. I don't think many would. But how do you feel overall about Buffalo? Did they get better or worse as status quo?
Yeah, losing Tuch is tough, right? He was a big part of the team. He's an amazing rush player, like great defensively, just kind of glued everything together. But the good news is with Buffalo, they have so many good young players that are almost ready to step up. It's not a big stretch to be like, okay, Zach Benson's up there, Josh Doan's up there, right? Consta Helenius, right? Like he's going to get some run. Ostlund, there's so many players on this team that I think warrant a shot at getting, a bigger role on this team and definitely in the offense. So yeah, losing Tuch is tough, but I'm not that concerned about it, to be honest with you. This team was really good. Similar to Boston though, at 5-on-5, like 13th in expected goals for. They were 4th in actual goals for. At 5-on-5. So really good finishing. Defensively, they were fine. They had great goaltending. Lyon, UPL outperformed the defensive environment there. And what an interesting team Buffalo was last year, wasn't it? Like, I forgot about this, but like I was digging in on Buffalo, like on December 8th, they were dead last in their conference, Buffalo, and they made the playoffs. Like that's wild stuff. They had like a 9-game win streak. They had like a team dinner where they aired grievances like Festivus, and they fired their GM, right? So lots of fun stuff there. All that to say, I still think this is a team on the rise. And I feel like they have the pieces to replace the ones they lost.
Right, let's talk about coaching. Lindy Ruff returns for his 3rd season, one of the most incongruous year 2s based on the first season that we've ever seen for a coach. It feels like after year 1, you're like, oh yeah, more Lindy Ruff, and year 2 is just a total unbelievable level up from basically everyone.
Yep.
So that was pretty interesting. How do you feel about Ruff now? Like, have we learned something new about Ruff? Has he changed things, or is it just a young team that kind of finally figured it out? They got some good luck. They got on a roll. How do you feel about Ruff's actual impact on this team?
I mean, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of what was going on there, but I did some reading on Lindy Ruff, and obviously he's an old school coach. We talk about these guys all the time, these dinosaurs, right, that are barking at people, and you make a mistake, you're stable to the bench, right? I feel like this season, especially after that team meeting and kind of that 9-game win streak that happened there, I feel like Lindy Ruff took a page out of like Paul Maurice. his book, and sort of became a little bit easier to, a little bit less in terms of like, going all in on a player and maybe allowing, a little bit more mistakes and kind of getting some vibes going with the team. Right. That's based on a couple interviews that I read. So it's not like, amazing analysis, but I do feel like there was a little bit of a change with the team overall. And I think some of that was Lindy Ruff sort of changing his mentality a little bit, because I think he knew his job was on the line as well. Like, you can't just keep going out doing the same thing over and over again. You were dead last in the conference, right? So that said, I think, yeah, I love that they kind of leaned into rush play again. You had amazing rushers in Alex Tuch, Tage Thompson. The power play was okay, right? What were they? No, they were 22nd, so that's not great. but everything else was really good. Like I said, the finishing very solid. They scored, fourth best in the league at 5-on-5. So you got to give the man his flowers. He was nominated for the Jack Adams for this turnaround. So we'll see if that sticks, though, right? Like, is this the new Lindy Ruff coached Buffalo Sabres, or are we going to, is he going to revert back to kind of, his dingus behavior?
Power play here. I think Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin are the only locks. Josh Norris has been on the top power play basically every time he's been healthy. Unfortunately, he's just not been healthy a lot. Jason Zucker has been efficient in the past, but, Zach Benson has kind of gone through a bit of a level up of his own. Does that mean that he's in a spot and he would be the most obvious replacement for the Zucker role if Zucker were to come off? How do you feel about the power play constituents here?
This is going to be something that we have to watch, right? And this power plays, they're going to have to improve, right? Like 22nd overall for a playoff team with this caliber of players on there, that's not going to cut it, right? So Rasmus Dahlin and Tage, yeah, your mainstays there. Of course, Josh Norris was injured again last year. What the hell? It's terrible, but that's fine. We're going to do a redo. I think Norris is a lock as well on power play one. So I feel good about that. And then, Alex Tuch is gone, but he wasn't really a power play one guy. So in the playoffs, they were running Zach Benson up there. They were running Josh Doan up there. And I've projected both of them for the other two members of that power play. So Doan, Thompson, Benson, Norris, and Dahlin is kind of how I see it rolling out. And I mean, they have some other pieces, like Jason Zucker is a player that was really good on the power play. So obviously I'm maybe taking a little bit of a leap taking him off there, but he's in a contract year. Like, he's 34. Are they really going to prioritize getting Jason Zucker out there? Maybe, right? Like, he's an excellent net front player. He does that really, really well. And it gelled. Like, he's one of the good power play performers on Buffalo, right? So to move him off there, yeah, that's a little bit of a leap that you're making, but I think that Zach Benson needs to be on there as opposed in that role that Jason Zucker plays. I feel like this is a guy that loves playing in the blue paint. He's a pest. And I think he's, like you said, he's leveling up a little bit. And we saw that a little bit in the playoffs.
Yeah, the Josh Doan shout is a good one. He was one of the more common guys to get power play one throughout the season and into the playoffs. As you mentioned, Jack Quinn, I think, is a guy who really showed something in the back half of last season. And when he got his opportunities on that top power play, mostly when Josh Norris was out, kind of a direct replacement 1-for-1 there, he was not too bad in that role. So that's another one at least to keep an eye on. Maybe not out of the gate, but in case of injury. All right, let's get into the projections here. I have Tage Thompson for 43 goals, 42 assists, 85 points. You have him for 45 goals, 43 assists, round that down to 87 points here. It seems like we feel pretty locked in on Tage Thompson here. I don't think there's going to be a huge difference from these projections. I feel actually pretty strongly that he should be in this range. The only way that I really see Tage Thompson deviating strongly from this projection is if we get a huge level up from one or both of Zach Benson and Josh Doan as his line mates, and that drives him to, a 50-goal season, and that puts him over 90 points, say.
I'd love to see it. I mean, Tage might be one of my favorite players to watch on the ice. I love his gameplay. I love what he brings to the table. And yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, we're obviously locked in here. This is a 40-plus goal scorer, no problem. I think there's some ceiling on the power play as well. Like last year, he only had 6 goals on the power play. My God, how is that even possible? How is that possible, Tage? So there's definitely, he had 40 goals with only 6 power play goals. So obviously I feel really good about 45 goals with the room for more there. But I liked what you said a lot about Josh Doan in particular as a line mate for Tage Thompson. I think Josh Doan is the type of guy that is just, he's the dog. He's a dog in the corners. He's got that. And, his ability to win board battles, like one-on-one, makes it easier for players like Tage and others to stay in open space as opposed to like collapsing in and trying to, 2-on-1 a guy so you win that puck battle. Josh Doan is winning those battles on his own. So it gives Tage the ability to attack space, right? And then obviously with his skill set, he's able to, do stuff with that. So I hope that Josh Doan and Tage Thompson play together. I've got Peyton Krebs as the third player on that line, just because they played a lot of last season together. I think there's some familiarity there. And obviously Buffalo just re-upped Peyton Krebs as well to a new contract, $4.5 million for Peyton Krebs. So yeah, I think that's sort of how I'm seeing the top line there. But obviously I really like Tage. I like him in the late second round, maybe mid second round, even late second round. Early third is a smash for Tage. I'm all over it.
Right, Zach Benson, I have for 21 goals, 40 assists, 61 points. You have him for 21 goals, 40 assists, 61 points. So we're pretty tight on Zach Benson here. What do you think the ceiling is for Benson? Obviously, we're projecting him to be used a bit more, to take up some of that Alex Tuck real estate in the top 6, perhaps. But what do you think a realistic ceiling case is for Zach Benson this season?
We might be looking at it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go crazy with Zach Benson. Like, this year, right? It's still a very young player. This guy's only 21, right? I think he will get elevated up the lineup. We saw what he was able to do in the playoffs here with Buffalo. This guy really made himself indispensable, right? He was a, elite level pest. The work rate is insane. His ability, like his penalty differential is insane as well. His ability to draw penalties, like, yeah, that'll play, right? Like you got Nick Cousins out here in a guy that can actually score and facilitate offense as well. So, I'm a big fan of Zach Benson, but I'm not super comfortable projecting more than, like, we've got 61, I think ceiling 65 is kind of as far as I really want to go there with him. This is a guy that's, yeah, he's part of good play driving lines, but he's not the main play driver. You know what I mean? So I think that, like, unless he was able to do that, like this is a guy that sort of gets in where he fits in, and he does that really well. And I think that's only going to get better. But he's also a fairly inefficient player. We haven't seen what he can do on the power play. Does he get power play 1? Like, that's going to be a big thing as well, because he only got 5 power play points last year. I've got him for 13 power play points this year. If he gets power play 1 all year, and that power play is better than 22nd overall in the league, does he get 20 power play points? Now we're starting to cook here. So all that to say, I think 65 is sort of where I'm at in terms of ceiling. I've got him for 61 points. What about you?
Yeah, I have him for 13 power play points as well. That's what I was going to say, is really power play 1 all year, hit 20 plus power play points. And now we're talking about a guy who's pushing 70 potentially. The other way I see it, I have him for 13 minutes, 45 seconds, even strength, average time on ice. That's not a huge number. And if he really does fit perfectly with Tage Thompson on the top line, and they say this is a top line that we need to play 15 minutes a game, then that's another way that he just adds a little bit more there. And you could talk about a 70-point ceiling scenario for Zach Benson. Josh Doan next up, 27 goal, 32 assist, 59-point projection from me. 26 goal, 33 assist, 59-point projection from you. So just a difference of a goal versus an assist for you and I on Josh Doan. Love this player. I'm not sure how big the ceiling is. I do think that he's a great fit on any line, because he just does all the things that nobody else wants to do. And so he's really easy to slot in anywhere, and he can get to biz. The other guys can do what they do best. So I like Josh Doan a lot here. Again, I feel like it is going to truly depend on how much Tage Thompson exposure he gets and whether he's on that top power play consistently to see if he can hit this. I am for 19 power play points to get to 59 points here, so he is a little bit more solidified on the power play in my mind with that projection.
Yep, I had him for 20, which feels like, wow, I had him for 20. Like I had to look at it again, like, oh, yeah, okay, based on the numbers I'm looking at, and the type of player he is. But I'm a big fan of him. I feel like this is a guy that, definitely separated himself from the pack. I mean, in season too, like Zach Benson had an amazing playoffs and separated himself there and had a reasonable season, Zach Benson, but Josh Doan was good all year. He was really good. He was, his highlight package, really good stuff. He's the dog, right? He does that. And like I said, that those power play numbers were really good as well. So yeah, I'm projecting Doan to play with Thompson. I really like that. And something else I like about Josh Doan, he hits, right? I've got him projected for 85 hits or 86 hits. He blocks 36 blocks. And what we really need to see with Buffalo is, where does Alex Tuch's ice time go? Right? Does it go to Benson? Does it go to Doan? Does it go to someone else? Like, do they share it all? Right? Because that, I think, is really going to be telling about where we actually end up with the production on these players. But, I've got Doan for 59 points. You got him for 59. He paced for, or he had 52 points last year. So this isn't a crazy reach. I think this is a player that probably has 60 to 65 point potential as soon as next season.
Yep, totally agree with that. Josh Norris next up, 23 goal, 38 assists, rounding down to 60 point projection for me. 26 goals, 39 assists, 65 point projection for you, Blake. One of our bigger differences here, not too surprising, you've always been a big Josh Norris promoter on the podcast. I do think he's another guy that you can look at late in your drafts. I think he's going to be forgotten again due to all the injuries. And when he's healthy, I think you're going to probably enjoy having him on your fantasy squad.
Oh God. I make a promise to you folks. I won't put him on the sleeper list this year. Okay. But he is a sleeper for me, because what's going to happen next year? I've projected him basically for the same amount of points. It's just another year where he had insane injuries. He basically took a face off and fell apart. So, I still like the player the same way I did last year, but I can't in good conscience be like, go out and get Josh Norris, but if he can somehow find his way to staying healthy, this is a very efficient shooter, a selective shooter, right? So that's what helps him with his efficiency. He's a great play connector. He's got great speed. He hits, he blocks, he does those things. So, and he should be power play one as well. And I don't think he was fully healthy when he came back. I think his minutes were sort of tamped down a little bit, when he came back there, and even in the playoffs. So I think we see more minutes for Josh Norris next year. And again, 65 points, I feel really good about that. And you can get it very late in your draft, maybe with your last pick even, I don't know. But how do you see the lines going out? I think we're looking at it here, but you see Norris as the C2 and Tage as the C1. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. Just to spread out the love at center, I think that makes the most sense. And I think they've got enough guys. I think previously the problem with Tage was not that Tage couldn't play center. It's just that they had enough guys to spread around that it made more sense to put Tage over to the wing to spread out their center depth. I think this year, with the way the team looks on paper, at least, it makes more sense for Tage to play predominantly at center and for Norris to be the 2C, and that slots in Ryan McLeod as the 3C, which is kind of where those players fit in my mind. I think that's the most likely scenario. Let's talk about Jason Zucker. I am really scared of this projection that I had. 24 goal, 28 assist, 52 point projection for me. 22 goal, 30 assist, 52 point projection for you. A lot of this is dependent on that power play. So I have him for 18 power play points there. That's a good chunk of this, right? But also his minutes went down over the course of last year. They don't have a lot of true left wingers here, which is part of this. If Peyton Krebs goes up there, that probably pushes down Zucker, and you could even see Zucker on the fourth line, which is why I'm very, very scared of projecting Zucker this high, because I do see this as a potential scenario, and I also see a scenario in which he gets totally Frank Vetrano'd this year, and you just completely forget that he exists by the end of the season. So, not a guy I'm targeting by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm definitely going to be checking out those lines, and especially the power play lines, to see if he's a member there.
Yeah, definitely a wait and see player here, Jason Zucker. Big pimping. But yeah, this is, I could see all those scenarios happening. I think he's in a contract year as well, right, Jason Zucker? So yeah, it's just, it's risky bisky, right? But we've seen proof of concept with this player, right? This is a guy that has been a good part, like paced for 2 60-point seasons with the Buffalo Sabres here in the last 2 years. That's really nice stuff with really good power play numbers. So that power play performance is really the key to keeping his value up. I don't know if it makes him draftable. I even on power play one, like I don't, even with my last pick, I'm not going like, oh, Jason Zucker's here. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I should, but I'm just not there with it. Age of the player and potential for him to get, smashed down the lineup. So that said, I think he's going to be a good streamer for us this year. Again, underrated. That we'll pick him up and he'll be able to deliver some stuff there.
All right, Jack Quinn, I have for 27 goals, 29 assists, 56 points. You have him for 23 goals, 32 assists, 55 points. As I mentioned, Jack Quinn had a really nice run, basically the back half of the season. Took a big step in terms of his individual chance generation, which I really like to see. And that's something that I think could carry over into the season. I do think he's pretty blocked from a top power play role unless we see another Josh Norris injury, which might actually kind of take away from Jack Quinn's even strength production, as I think those two will probably play a fair amount of minutes together at even strength this year. So overall, I just don't see a strong path to a ceiling play here for Jack Quinn, but I do really like the player. And if, there was some scenario in which we look up after game 20 and it's Zach Benson and Jack Quinn on Tage Thompson's wings, and Jack Quinn is somehow on the top power play as well, like that's a scenario in which I think you could actually be looking at something with Jack Quinn.
Yeah, I think he nailed it on the head there. I feel like this is a player that's blocked by other players, and not that he's not a great fantasy option, right? Or would be, but there are other guys that have separated themselves. With Jack Quinn. So one of the things that he's amazing at though is his rush offense. Like this is again another amazing rusher. Entries that lead to chances. I love that. He's really good with that. Chance assists as well. He's really big on that with his micro stats. But yeah, where's he going to play? Is he going to play line 2? Is he going to play line 3? Like I've got Jack Quinn as my right winger on the third line with Ryan McLeod and Jason Zucker. So I've got that as my third line, which, that's a potential. I could see Quinn going to the first line, right? It's just this team without Alex Tuck now, and a lot of these players like Yuri Kulik coming back. We got Ostlund in here. We got Hellenius in here. What does it look like? We're doing projection shows in July, folks. Like these are going to get narrowed down, and we're going to figure it out. But my initial thought is that Quinn is going to be blocked. But that said, this is a guy that if he goes somewhere else, I could absolutely see him popping off. He still had a 51 point pace, I think, last season. Well, let me just look at this. Yeah, 51 points. That's very nice. And it's worth noting as well, like his ice time went up in the playoffs by almost a minute. Mm-hmm. And he got a 55% power play share in the playoffs. So that's not nothing, right? That's a player you need to watch, right? Shout out to Ryan from Trade Talks, loves Jack Quinn, right? This could be the year, my man. So yeah, obviously I love the player, but we need to see what his deployment is going to be.
Right, the third line, as I had it in this round, Ryan McLeod, Noah Ostlund, and Consta Hellenius. McLeod I had for 14 goals, 41 assists, and 54 points for the round down. 15 goals, 35 assists, 50 points for you. I think McLeod, without power play time especially, which he's not really gotten with the advent of all these other players that Buffalo can throw out there, I think he's just a streamer and has given some good streamer weeks here. Obviously, a guy who can score 50 points can give you a good streamer week. Ostlund is a guy who might have a little bit more ceiling if he does get into a role on the power play, especially. He did get a couple looks here or there on the top power play unit at points throughout the season. Didn't make anything stick, but at least worth noting it was in Lindy Ruff's mind. 15 goal, 23 assists, 38 point projection for me. 14 goal, 26 assists, 40 point projection for you. And then the newcomer is Consta Hellenius, who I have for 13 goals, 26 assists, 39 points. You have for 13 goals, 24 assists, rounding up to 38 points. I think Hellenius is obviously a bit of a wild card, but he had a great playoffs and was terrific in the AHL. Should be noted as well. just absolutely lit it up down there. Had a just a
Yeah.
season that made it impossible for them to ignore what he was doing, and he gets brought up in the pressure cooker of the NHL playoffs and immediately delivers. So I think that's something to monitor there as well. I didn't do Peyton Krebs just because I don't think there's a ceiling with this player. I think he is a complement to Tage Thompson that has worked
Sure.
in the past. Which, yeah, I mean, again, as kind of a streamer, you could look that way. I'm not
He's a
going to hate
beefer.
on it. Yeah, but you had him for 12 goals, 25 assists, 37 points. I think that's probably closer to the ceiling than it is to the floor there with Peyton Krebs. Anything to add on these players, Blake?
Yeah, I really like McLeod a lot. I love your projection on McLeod. You're higher than on him than I was, and yeah, that's surprising because I wanted to be higher. I couldn't get there with the numbers, but I just think that this is a really good player. He's an underrated player. He's got amazing speed, underrated rush game. You look at his microstat profile; it shows a player that is excelling off the rush, frequently on his line, the main puck handler, getting into the zone. Which often leads to scoring chances. And then, with his speed, he's a really good forechecker as well, flushing players out in, kind of creating havoc down there. So I like McLeod as a guy they throw it in the last minutes of games as well. I think they feel comfortable with that. The guy's only 26. I have him in my both my dynasty teams. I like Ryan McLeod. I feel like, there's no ceiling there, right? This is not an offensive player, but definitely a guy I'm looking at that as a streamer and a guy that can get hot. I mean, he had a segment, in the third quarter of the year here, 22 points in 22 games. That'll play. Ryan McLeod, he did that, right? So someone to watch. And I'm with you on the other players there. It's a crapshoot. Like we got Ostlund, we got Hellenius, we got Krebs, we got Yuri Kulik. I projected them all around like 35 to 39 points. So it's kind of one of those things we have to wait and see who's going to get that offensive opportunity. I think Yuri Kulik is an interesting piece. He's played with Tage before. They've prioritized him before, but he's coming off injury. We'll see what happens there. And Hellenius, you're kind of selling me on the guy. I'm interested to watch that player and see where they deploy him.
All right, let's move to the defense. Matthias Samuelsson had a great year last year and became actually a pretty valuable fantasy asset when all is said and done. I have him for 9 goals, 24 assists, rounding down to 32 points. You have him for 10 goals, 25 assists, and 35 points. Last year, as I mentioned, pretty good year for him. In 78 games, he has 13 goals and 41 points, putting him squarely into fantasy relevance with some peripherals as well to boot. I think this guy definitely gives major Colton Pareko from a year ago vibes, where like it feels almost inevitable that a lot of that production, especially the goal production, will just go away.
Yep.
Feels like a shooting percentage bender that's not going to last. So I'm not drafting Matthias Samuelsson unless it's a very deep league, like 5 or 6 D slots or something like that, 18 team league, something like that. I just feel like he is kind of the most obvious trap on the board this year.
Yep. And I've seen people going for it. It's like, yeah, I'll pick up Matthias Samuelsson. It's like, he's never going to do that again, folks. I can't see him doing that again. Like the guy, shot 12%, 13 goals. That's insane, right? He played a career high in minutes, nothing on the power play, right? He's a fine, banger league guy, if you want hits and blocks. And I just don't see him getting close to that goal total again. I talked about rushed exits before. It's interesting because Rasmus Dahlin was number 1 in Corey's data on all 3 zones in that metric, rushed exits. And is it a surprise that Matthias Samuelsson had such a massive year? I don't know. I think there's a correlation there where Dahlin is getting back, making really smart plays with the puck, getting Samuelsson in stride. Samuelsson's able, he's a fine passer. He can do that, right? And getting it to some of these good rushers on Buffalo, and they're just getting to biz, right? And he's running into some assists there. So all that to say, I'm not interested in Samuelsson at all. Dahlin, though. Oh, hell yeah. Like this is a beauty. Talk to me about Dahlin. What do you got?
Yeah, I've got him for 20 goals, 61 assists, and 81 points. You've got him for 20 goals, 56 assists, running down to 75 points there. This is actually the biggest difference we have on any player on Buffalo. I've got 6.2 points more than you do on Dahlin. So I don't think we need to deep dive it too much. What'd you get him for power play points? I have him for 25.9.
I got him 25.2. So
Okay,
we're right there.
Most of it is at even strength then. I have him for 20 minutes, 54% IPP, 12% on ice shooting percentage.
I got him 20 minutes, 15 seconds, 52% IPP, 10.86 on ice shooting percentage.
So the on-ice shooting percentage significantly lower for you there. So yeah, I think it is just even strength that I'm a little bit more bullish on him in general. I think, yeah, if you believe in the young offense that they have, guys like Zach Benson and Josh Norris and even Jack Quinn being efficient at even strength, then I think Rasmus Dahlin is the guy that probably benefits the most from that, as being the guy who gets the puck to those players who put it in the net. So that's why I'm pretty bullish on Darlene. I mean, regardless, I
Yeah,
think this is a guy
75, 80. Yeah.
you're taking in the mid-second round and feeling pretty great about it every single time. All right, let's keep rolling. Let's talk about Owen Power and Olin Zellweger, two guys who could take on a second power play unit role for the Sabres this season. Power I have for 9 goals and 26 assists for 35 points. You have for 9 goals, 25 assists, 34 points. Zellweger I have for 11 goals, 24 assists, and 35 points. You have him for 10 goals, 23 assists, 33 points. I think that both these guys will, I mean, the projections are pretty similar,
Yeah.
obviously, identical for me, actually. But Zellweger is the guy that I have a lot more interest in terms of a ceiling case. Power is a guy that you might stream sometimes. Zellweger is a guy, if Dahlin went down and Zellweger was on power play 1, and he's getting more even strength ice time to boot, now all of a sudden you're really thinking about Zellweger as a legit fantasy option.
Yep. I think he almost was last year. Like, again, just another player under the hood you're looking at and you're going like, how is this not a guy not getting more points, right? Like, I remember last year when we were talking Jackson Lacoma big time. His micro stats, his player profile, all the stuff looked amazing. Like everything, all 3 zones. Olin Zellweger, his offensive numbers looked exactly like Jackson Lacomb's. The defense, however, did not. It looked like, hot garbage, right? And that's the problem with Olin Zellweger. He's going to be one of these third pairing sheltered guys, right? Power play 2 guys. But I mean, if he can figure it out, we've got all the makings of a really good fantasy asset here in Olin Zellweger. That said, I mean, I projected him for 19 minutes. I think it'll be marginally better than what we saw in Anaheim there. And again, yeah, if Dahlin goes down, I'm taking Zellweger as the power play 1 stash there. And then Owen Power, I think he leveled up a little bit last year, but not in a way that matters for fantasy. You know what I mean? I feel like, this is a guy that became a better player for the team. Like the team went from last in the conference to, making the playoffs and just going nuclear. And I think Power was a big part of that in the way that he dug in defensively, right? And used his skill set to sort of help exit the zone better and start plays rather than being a guy at the end of plays, right? I looked into some of his metrics on ice at 5-on-5, things like Corsi for percentage, goals for percentage, expected goals for, scoring chances for percentage. They were all his best marks in the past 4 years, Owen Power. So those are all really good metrics, kind of indicating that he's a valuable player for the team, just not so much in fantasy. And his power play share went way down last year. I expect him to be more of this kind of defensive stalwart moving forward, like a good transition defensive defenseman.
All right. Top 3 targets, Blake. Give it to me.
Oh, yeah. You bet I'll give it to you, buddy. Josh Norris, number 1. He's not even on your list, Nate. How dare you? How dare you sully Josh Norris's good name? I'm taking him number 1 because I want to. All right. Now he's going to get power play 1, top 6, and you're going to get him late as hell. So I'm into that. Josh Doan, I've got as my second. I really like that player. As I said, there's peripheral floor as well with the hits and blocks, plus a power play ceiling. If he gets power play 1, I think there's 20 plus power play points there. Zach the Butler Benson as my third pick. 60 points we projected him for. I mean, like I said, I don't think there's a lot of ceiling for more, but I do think this is a player that Buffalo is going to prioritize a little bit more and toss out there in better offensive situations. So I'm into it.
All right, top 3 targets for me. Zach Benson, number 1. I do think there's ceiling there for 70 points if he gets the top power play and gets a little more even strength ice time with Tage. Josh Doan, number 2, and Jack Quinn, number 3. Would probably take some injuries for the Jack Quinn one to hit, but if it did, I think it could actually be one of the more impactful ones for fantasy overall. So I wanted to shout that one out there. All right, last one is Calgary. key departures here, obviously going back to in-season, but Nazem Kadri, Blake Coleman in the offseason here, Rasmus Anderson and Mackenzie Weegar both in-season. Safe to say a lot of veteran, I don't know if leadership is necessarily the word I'd use for all of these players, but definitely veteran presence has left the Calgary locker room at this point. Key arrivals here, Shimon Nemec, obviously the big one this offseason, big trade, big signing. Zach Whitecloud comes over in the Rasmus Anderson deal, might be just as good as Rasmus Anderson, depending on who you ask. Jacob Middleton, also coming over in the Blake Coleman trade. Ryan Strome was a guy they picked up and can play kind of a third center role for them and not get absolutely buried. And Maxim Siplikov was also addressed here. And because it's Calgary, he might actually get some playing time. So that's where we're at with Calgary. Anything you want to talk about with these names, Blake?
I mean, Shimon Nemec is a really nice swing for Calgary, and you know, they've got great players in their system. Let's shout that out, right? You know, there's some bits
They
and
have a
pieces.
great
there.
logo.
Yeah, their logo is awesome. They're getting a new stadium. I mean, it's on the up and up over there, right? This is coming from a Vancouver Canucks fan, folks. So yeah, we know what it's like to lose. All right, but anyways, yeah, Shimon Nemec is a really nice swing there, and yeah, like with the contract, I remember when he signed that, I was like, whoa, that's quite a bit. And then other people started signing those contracts, and you're like, oh, all right, that seems fine to me now. Great. Like that's, you know, so I'm really excited to talk to you about Nemec. I think that's a fun player for fantasy, and it adds a unique element for Calgary here on the back end that they didn't have before.
All right, let's get the downers out of the way first. Ryan Husker returns for his third season as coach of the Calgary Flames. So far has not been able to extract water from the stone that is the Calgary Flames offense. Feels like a really obvious candidate to me to get let go after this season, though. Like, oftentimes you see, if you think this team is going to bottom out, they're probably not going to let the coach go in season unless they're like still somehow have playoff hopes. This doesn't look on paper like a team that will have playoff hopes. And so if it is just a lost season for the Flames in general, probably Huska plays the entire season out and realizes he's coaching for a job, maybe not even a job with the Flames, but a potential future job. And those are sometimes the worst situations because he doesn't actually, we just saw it with Toronto where Easton Callan just gets completely buried as Craig Berube tries to coach himself into his next job, meanwhile probably knowing that he wasn't going to be brought back. So yeah, that's what I'm worried about with Huska. Anything you want to talk about with this guy?
He gives me Greg Cronin vibes, honestly. Like it's you've got some good young, like, you know, it sounds like a downer here, Calgary, but they have some good young pieces that can do things potentially for fantasy, but Huska's keeping them under his big thumb. I don't quite understand the thinking here. The style of play that Huska endorses is literally chip the puck out, chip the puck in, get the puck, you know, like it's, you know, if any of you have played hockey out there, it's lame to play those type of games. You want the puck on your stick. You want to make plays. And Huska's really kind of minimizing that for this team in terms of like a more effort-based system here and defensive structure, right? So I don't know. Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is a guy, I could see them letting him go mid-season here, like especially if he's minimizing these young players. Like we're going to talk about some of them that they got some bits and pieces. They got guys that can get out there and do things, exciting things for hockey and for fantasy. And yeah, I just think this guy's kind of on fumes.
All right, let's talk about the power play here. I think Huberto, Coronado, and Morgan Frost are the locks on the top power play. Any disagreement there, Blake?
No, I don't think so. I like that.
All right, Matvei Greden got time there at the end of 2025-26. Feels like the most obvious candidate as a potential fourth forward. But the big question, I think, is it Shimon Nemec or is it Zayne Parekh on the back end for power play one? How are you looking at that one, Blake?
Yep. For me personally, like I think the better power play one quarterback would be Zayne Parekh. That's an actual quarterback, a guy that, you know, calls out the plays, is setting things up. Whereas Nemec is more of a dynamic rusher. He's a really good shooter. But he's not so much a facilitator, right? I think on maybe on a power play where the forwards don't have kind of this is weird to say, like, but some of the skill sets that these Calgary forwards have, they're good shooters, right? You don't need Nemec coming in, just going downhill and just firing the biscuit, right? Like you need a guy like Zayne Parekh, making plays at the line, setting guys up for 1-Ts, right? You got a great shooter in Coronado. Morgan Frost is an underrated shooter. You got an elite facilitator in Jonathan Huberdeau. Like he's really good. That's one thing he does really well. So, and then you got a fun player in Matt Greeden who can, we'll see what he can do. But I think it should be Zayne Parekh. I think I could see with the contract, I could see Nemec maybe starting there, but I don't know. I read some stuff, about the Flames as well, their offseason plans. Like it sounds like they're pretty invested in having Parekh at least, like, first off, play the whole season, right? And then second off, like giving him an opportunity to succeed at what he's good at. And what he's good at is elite level offense, right? And offensive generation. And that's what you need on a power play. So I think that I'm leaning Parekh.
I have split this one right down the middle for now. 2.5 minutes average time on ice for both of them in my projections. So that comes out to 15.1 power play points for Parekh and 14.4 for Nemec. I agree. Parekh should be the guy. I think he's more offensively talented. I think Nemec could be a power play 1 quarterback on a fair number of teams around the league and would be an upgrade over what other teams have in a fair amount of spots. But I don't think that's the case with Parekh, who I think has a difference-making ability on the back end, and is one of the few defensemen at this age who could immediately step in, take advantage of that extra space on a power play, and be dangerous shooting the puck as well as distributing it. So that's where I'm at on that. Sharon Govich is still theoretically a good power play shooter, but it does really seem like he's burned all his bridges with Huska, who doesn't seem like a guy who's ever forgotten one of those type of grievances. So I don't think we get that, unfortunately. Still somewhere in there lives the ghost of a 31 goal scorer from a few years ago. But
so sad.
We'll keep going and get into these projections here. Off the rip, Morgan Frost, I have for 22 goals, 28 assists, 50 points. You have for 24 goals, 30 assists, and 54 points there. I am not excited about Morgan Frost, but I do think that realistically, like, their center depth is Frost, Backlund, and Strome, and so Frost is going to get a good chunk of minutes. I think he's really the only one of those three who is a candidate to play center on a top power play unit, and so he's going to be there as a lock, as I mentioned. And so, for 50 points with 18 power play points, I think you're going to be able to stream Morgan Frost.
Yeah, I think, looking at your projection on Calgary, it was interesting because I think I'm higher just in general on what Calgary can potentially do. But I think that's, reliant on Huska, doing the right thing and prioritizing some of these younger players, which is not a lock by any means. But the Tinkly Winkly man, Morgan Frost, for you that don't know, the Tinkly Winkly man is Morgan Frost. That's his, villain name, and Morgan Frost is his, actual name, right? So just putting it out there for the lore, the A&G lore. But I like Morgan Frost a lot. I think that this is an underrated rush player. And once they traded Nazem Kadri out of there, he became the de facto 1C, and he ran with it. I think that he played really, really well. And I have every reason to believe that he's going to get a good look here going into the season. He's in a contract year. I have seen his name out there in some trade rumors, people looking to pick up Morgan Frost. So that would obviously throw this projection into a blender. But I've got him for almost 20 power play points, right? And that's on a team like this. This team was 31st overall in power play last year in terms of goals for 60. Terrible. So that said, I do like Morgan Frost. I think that he's absolutely streamable. And then, there's some other bits and pieces in there, Nathan.
There definitely are. One of those bits, not pieces, is Jonathan Huberdeau, who I have projected for 19 goals, 33 assists, rounding down to 51 points. You have for 19 goals, 36 assists, and 55 points. I mean, I just can't get excited about Jonathan Huberdeau anymore. In his 4 years in Calgary, he goes for 55 points, 52 points, 62 points, and then last year plays only 50 games, but only scores 25 points in those 50 games. Yeah, pretty brutal. I think he might get more ice time this year, and maybe that's a path to some more points, but I don't know how you can get excited about what Huberdeau is bringing to the table in the year of our Lord 2026.
You're not getting excited, that's for damn sure. I remember like a couple years ago, I was like, I in our early mock draft or something, I picked up Jonathan Huberdeau, and everyone was like, "Oh, damn, that was such a good pick. Oh, he's gonna bounce back big time." No, how about no? I mean, Jonathan Huberdeau, he is who we thought he was. All right. But that said, I mean, this is a player that's been playing through injury for a long time here. Like he had a pretty significant injury that flared up last year. And yeah, he dealt with it, right? And so I'm hoping that we get a truly healthy Jonathan Huberdeau coming in here. As I mentioned before, I think he's, an elite playmaker. Like he is. I think that's what he's bringing to the table. This guy's high danger passes off the chain. He's really good at that type of stuff. But the problem is he doesn't have a lot of people to play with. He's got Morgan Frost and Matt Coronado, right? Which is fine. But yeah, imagine if Huberdeau just went off for like 100 points next year, like just brought it full circle. Like and we're all like, how did this happen? Oh my God. But yeah, I don't know. I think that he'll be a big part of the power play, right? I've got him for 18 power play points, hits and blocks, whatever. I've got him for, just under 18 and a half minutes average time on ice. I think you could do worse in terms of even a last pick. Maybe there's probably other more upside type players you want to get there. But I think we'll be streaming him in for sure during the season. And I could see that power play being a little bit better than 31st, especially you got Parekh or Nemec on the back end. I think that's an upgrade over what we saw last year.
Yep. I don't disagree there, but I am going to wait to see it with Huberdeau at this point. Coronado next up, one of the few guys who might get a little bit excited about with Calgary this year. I have for 25 goals, 33 assists, 58 points. You have him for 27 goals and 33 assists for 60 points. I think Coronado has ceiling. I don't know that we see that ceiling on this iteration of the Calgary Flames, but I think like if you just plopped him on honestly any of the other three teams we've talked about here today, that he would instantly be a guy with 70-point ceiling to me. And so I do think that that's something to shout out with Matt Coronado. I think how bad this team is really obscures how good Coronado could be, and maybe it wouldn't be all that much better in another spot, but I think you at least have to leave yourself room for that. I also think there's a chance that they just really run Coronado into the ground if he starts on fire, that he could be a guy who actually gets into that like 15 and a half, 16 minutes average time on ice at even strength alone. And again, if the power play miraculously turns a page and is even a middling unit, then that's another way that you could see some ceiling here. I don't love the ceiling outcomes here just because I don't love the talent around Coronado, but I do really like the player.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have too much to add. We've talked about this player a little bit so far this offseason, and I'll talk about him again because I do think that he's got all the underlyings of a player that could really pop off for fantasy. But he's on one of the worst teams in terms of offensive environments that ever existed. My God, this is a slog. It's like watching a plant grow, but like not in like that fast motion, like it's like just like, is that a stem? I don't know what the hell's happening here. But yeah, I think that like one thing that I love about Coronado, and we've talked about before, is his ability to generate shots off the rush. Not so much high danger chances, but shots. He's a bit of a chucker off the rush, but he did that better than anyone else last year. This guy is unbelievable in terms of that. And let's say he plays the full season with Jonathan Huberdeau. I like the idea of that, right? He did play with Jonathan Huberdeau and Morgan Frost last year. They had, I'm looking at Frozen Tools right now, Dauber Frozen Tools. They had a 52% Corsi 4 percentage playing together. That'll play. Like that's fine, and this is a guy that's another year older, I think he could shoot a little bit more even, right? But in better position. So hopefully that happens. But yeah, I think it's still going to be a little ways away, at least under Huska. Like Huska actually scratched this guy. Healthy scratch, Matt Coronado last year. Thank you, Ryan Huska. How you doing this? I don't know. But do not scratch Matt Coronado again. This is pretty much your franchise player at this point. But yeah, I don't know. I'm yammering on. I've got him for 60 points. I feel like that's probably ceiling for Matt Coronado. I think it's going to be closer to 50 to 55.
All right, we can probably speed run a little bit through the rest
Oh, you
of this
bet.
Flames roster. Mikael Backlund, I have for 16 goals, 36 points in total, 20 assists there as well. 14 goals, 25 assists, 39 points for you. Joel Farabee, I currently have projected on that second line. I have him for 19 goals, 18 assists, 37 points. You have him for 18 goals, 22 assists, and 40 points. The third member of that second line, as I have it, is Matvei Greedon, who I think actually has some intrigue. I have him for 16 goals, 27 assists, and 43 points. You have him up at 18 goals, 31 assists, and 49 points, Blake. This is the biggest difference between the two of us on any player on Calgary. So defend your position on Matvei Greedon.
I have no defense. I like his name. No, it's not true. But yeah, I just love this kid. I love, I'm a sucker for a narrative too, Nate, right? Like, I was watching a lot of offseason interviews. Like, one of the things I saw with Matt Greedon, and this shouldn't affect your projection, but yeah, he was just talking about how he's going to, he's going to lead the Calgary Flames in scoring next year. He said that.
Nice.
That's sick. I mean, and I watched some stuff of Ryan Huska talking about the players. Well, he's really into him. Like, he talked about putting him up in the line. Obviously, he was getting power play one there at the end of the season. I think this is a guy that has a lot of runway, and he's crazy enough to kind of make it work. You know what I mean? Like, he's out in Calgary. It doesn't matter, right? Like, I think this is a player that could get an opportunity, line two, power play one, and really run with it. This is a guy that sort of profiles the way Shabanov does did before he came to, the Islanders there. I think he's got that offensive facilitation, deception, those type of things. Matt Begrin's a really fun player and a guy I'm looking for in drafts, maybe as a fun pick at the end. 49 points. Yeah, maybe that's a little spicy. Certainly for a player that hasn't proven that, but I like what this guy's bringing to the table, and I like what the team is saying about him in the background. So, we'll see what happens. I'll probably look at that projection again, but I've got him for 18 power play points. That's probably insane. Maybe we go down to like 12. That probably makes more sense, but I don't know. How many power play points did you get Greedon for?
I'm for 14 and a half.
There you go. What a sensible man you are, Nick.
All right, third line here. I have Renstrom. I was realizing that this number doesn't make any sense. I did not actually have him projected for 20 goals. There's a copy paste error there. I have him for 13 goals.
Go out and get Ryan Strome, everybody. This is the next 20 goal scorer for the Calgary Flames.
13 goals, 17 assists, 30 points is my projection for Ryan Strome. Connor Zary, I have for 15 goals, 18 assists, 32 points. You have him for 17 goals, 21 assists, 38 points. Igor Sharangovich, I have for 17 goals, 19 assists, 36 points. You have for 21 goals, 17 assists, and 38 points. I don't think there's much to say here. I think there are unique universes in which Connor Zary and Igor Sharangovich could both be fantasy relevant, but neither of them are on this iteration of the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, I'm not going to go too into it there, but Connor Zary, I think, probably gets traded this year. I think he's pissed. He doesn't like Ryan Huska. I could see them moving on from him, and I can see that player doing well in another place. That's a good offensive player that's not really getting the chance to shine here in Calgary. And then Sharangovich, I read about him. He's actually staying in town, like working with the fitness coach for Calgary. So like he's got an off-season plan. So I like reading stuff like that. It's like, okay, this guy's taking it serious, right? They obviously sign him to good term, good contract. They need more from him, right? So I like Sharangovich. I've got him for 21 goals. Yeah, I think a 20-goal season from Sharangovich is an improvement that I'm happy to see. I still have a little bit of faith in that player, probably not here in Calgary.
All right, let's get to the D. Let's get the lower tier guys out of the way first. Kevin Ball, I didn't project you, did 4 goals, 17 assists, 21 points. Will give you over a hit and over a block per game, so that's probably more what you're after as a Banger League streamer. Mm-hmm. Jacob Middleton, similar story as a banger. You projected him for 4 goals and 16 assists for 20 points. Zach Whitecloud, I projected for 4 goals, 16 assists, 20 points. As you can see, all very similar. They are not going to outscore anybody else on this roster. They're all going to score the exact same amount of points. The 2 players of interest for fantasy purposes, Szymon Nemec, as we mentioned, I have him for 13 goals, 30 assists, 43 points. You have him for 11 goals, 28 assists, and 39 points. We may as well throw in Zayne Parex's projection here as well. I have him for 13 goals, 23 assists, rounding up to 36 points. You have him for 10 goals, 33 assists, 43 points. So both of us, I think, like both players here
Yep.
for different reasons. I think we could both see different scenarios in which either of them have a fantasy relevant season. I don't know that I see a strong scenario in which both are fantasy relevant at the same time. Do you, Blake?
Not on this team. I mean, and even are they now, like the way we've projected them? Like, are they really fantasy relevant? Whoever gets power play one, sure, we're taking a flyer on, but are we rostering the other one as well? Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, I have Nemec for 21 minutes and 45 seconds average time on ice. I do think he's going to get a pretty substantial even strength role. I mean, they
Yep.
trade a good amount for him. They give him a big contract. All signs lead to him being a fixture on the top pair for any amount of time moving forward. And if he's able to make all of that work, then I could see it being a really good spot for him. Zayne Parekh is harder to project. I've read some good things, like they're saying like, yeah, we want to get the best out of him. Of course they do, but also like there was that quote that was around the World Juniors last year where he's like talking about other NHL players being robots. And I mean, Zane Breck is no sesquipedalian, but at least he's a guy who's just coming into the league trying to get stuff done and saying what's actually on his mind. So I appreciate that piece. I just think that he might not be the guy who ingratiates himself, especially to a guy like Ryan Huska, who has not, at least to date, given us a reason to believe that he's going to, just do the best by every single young guy and put them in positions to succeed.
What did you just say? For God's sake! My head's spinning. I think I got the gist of that. Yeah. Zayne Parekh, one of the all-time names as well. Let's give him that. But yeah, this is a really interesting conversation. Like, I think obviously both players have value in what they bring to the offense, and they're so different.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really do feel like Zayne Parekh is like a quarterback. He's a guy that calls out the plays. He facilitates, whereas Nemec is more of a dynamic, shooting, rushing defenseman, a guy that jumps up in the rush. So something I like about Nemec a lot, and I'm going to be watching, is again talking about these rushed exits. Last year he played mostly with Brendan Dillon, who was fine at rushed exits, but I think I'm projecting him to play with Kevin Ball, who is Calgary's best player in terms of rushed exits. So, can he get Nemec in stride, right? Where he's not the one that has to go back and get the puck all the time. Now he's kind of in stride and he can set the play up like he's elite. He can jump into the play. So I think there's some potential offense there for Nemec, especially if some of these Calgary forwards can get the biz. But yeah, Zayne Parekh, it's a sketchy projection at best, right? Like it definitely relies on power play one. I've projected him for 19 minutes here. So it's that like Brant Clark kind of guy, right? When we know what happened there until he, hopefully eventually gets that time here this season, Brant Clark. But, will Zayne Parekh get it? I'm not convinced, right? And that's still, I still have him for 17 power play points. So I think you could draft both guys probably, or one of them. I definitely wouldn't draft both of them for God's sake. But yeah, I mean, who are you leaning? Let's say you've got it's your last pick, or you're just looking for your 50. You've got Zayne Parekh, you've got Nemec out there. Who are you taking?
Yeah, I've done both in the mocks that we've been
Yep,
doing so far. I
me
think
too.
Parekh is the fun one, and Nemec is probably the one that I think Huska goes with more often than not. And so I think the smart money is probably on Nemec, but I do believe that Parekh has more of a ceiling, especially as a goal scorer, which matters more for fantasy as well.
Yeah,
Like if
for sure.
you've watched Zane Parekh, if you watched the World Juniors last year, like you've seen his ability to shoot the puck, which is special for a defenseman. I think he's probably, a top maybe 20, maybe even higher NHL defenseman at shooting the puck right now. And so that's just a special talent that he has that not a lot of other defensemen can bring to bear in any given situation. I had him for 17 and a half minutes total time on ice to get to this projection of 35 and a half points. So yeah, if there was another scenario like at the end of last year for the last, I think like only 5 or 6 games or something, but he was playing second pair with Zach Whitecloud. And so do they look at that as a potential way to play out the season where he actually does end up getting more minutes than I'm projecting here? And now you're looking at a guy 40 plus points. Now the power play, if he's on power play 1 and that's working out, like there are scenarios in which Zayne Parekh is a bit more valuable than maybe I'm giving him credit for here with the median projection. All right, Blake, top 3 targets, give it to me.
Oh, hell yeah. Give it to me, Neil. Give me Matt Coronado, number 1, okay, with a bullet. I'm interested, right? I want him on my squad. I think it's a nice, you miss out on some right wingers there early on. You got Coronado in the wings you can pick up late. Zayne Parekh, I'm definitely interested as the ceiling play. And then Matt Bay-Green, yeah, like let's have some fun. I'm into that player the same way I was into Shabanov last year. Right. So, yeah, it's I think you could do a lot worse. I love the kid. I love his attitude.
Right, for myself, Coronado number 1, Nemec, as I mentioned, probably the smart play, and then Parekh, the fun play, are the other 2 for me there.
Good, clean fun.
All right, Blake, we made it.
Yeah.
2 hours and 17 minutes later. If you've made it this far with us, you should probably make your way to the description. Click on the link, join the Apples and Ginos Discord, join 2,000 plus other fantasy managers all talking about this. I'm sure this will incite a ton of conversation. Do leave your comments. Tell us why we're wrong. Tell us who you're looking for off of these teams. We do love to engage in all those conversations here on the comments, so do hit us up there or in the Discord. Check out the Patreon, subscribe to the YouTube, follow us wherever you can get it. Leave us a review on your Apple Podcasts or your Spotify podcast, wherever you're listening to this. That is going to be all that we've got for this particular episode. Hopefully it brought you some value. I hope you got a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. Any advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick and 18 Skaters. All the micro stats you heard came from all 3 zones. Many thanks to Matt Creamer for supplying the music for the podcast. That's it, folks. Much love.